It's a little bit after 6 o'clock, 6:04. I'm going to call the regular city council meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, followed by an invocation by Councilmember Pogorlich. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Thank you. Dear God, as we meet this evening as a governing body, we ask for your guidance and direction. We realize that we are blessed to be living in this amazing city in our wonderful country. Please provide us with wisdom and direction to conduct our business this evening for our community and the citizens living within it. We ask you provide comfort to those in need. We ask that you protect those who protect us. We ask that you protect those who serve in the military to protect the freedoms which you have blessed us with. We once again ask that you give strength and comfort to all those affected by the recent terrorist events. We pray for peace and give you our thanks. Amen.
Thank you, Member Pogorlich. Just for a reminder for those who do want to speak on items that are not on the agenda, that item comes up fairly quickly, so there are forms in the back corner by the doors, and please, if you wish to speak, present them to the city clerk who's seated to the far left. And we have a lot of items on the agenda this evening, so we will get the ball rolling. First order of business is proclamations. There's a proclamation recognizing the City Parks Department, which was moved out of my piles. And this is going to go to Carl Langerfield, who I believe is here in the audience. Carl, if you'd like to step forward. And basically, the this is to the Parks and Recreation Department. Parks and Recreation programs are the integral part of the communities throughout this country, including the city of Temple Terrace. Our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of the community and region. Parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improves the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Parks and recreation programs increase the community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. Parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. Our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreation departments. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the City of Temple Terrace recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be resolved by the City of Temple Terrace that July 1st is recognized in Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Temple Terrace. Carl, thank you very much for a wonderful program. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. I've known Carl for a very long time, so thank you, Carl, for all you do for our city and our department. Thank you. If you want to say something,
I have a few words.
further talk up your program.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of City Council. As we just heard, Parks and Recreation does play a vital role in the community. As I knew this event was coming up and knew this night was coming up, I asked the staff to provide for me a snapshot of what we do in just one day in our Parks and Recreation Department during the summer. So we took a snapshot of what we did yesterday. Just yesterday, The senior center provided activities for 45 seniors, provided free lunch to 21 of the seniors. 48 people came and played tennis on the tennis courts at the family complex. 138 members came and utilized the fitness center. 124 children took swimming lessons at the family complex pool. 52 children took part on the swim team at the family complex. 215 people, adults and children alike, swam in the pools. 53 children partook in gymnastics programs, whether they be classes or teams. 228 children were in summer camp. We provided free breakfast to 75 children, free lunches to 100 children. 63 people took miscellaneous classes such as theater, aerobics, cheerleading, and ballet. In order to accomplish all this in the summertime, we hire 12 additional summer camp counselors, 19 seasonal lifeguards, most of which were local students, college students. An interesting note about a newly hired aquatic supervisor that we have on board. She's been with us since the middle of April. Conversations with her turns out that she actually started her career with our Parks and Recreation Department in the early 90s as a toddler when she took swim lessons in our pool. Here she is 25 plus years later as our aquatic supervisor. It's an honor to have her on board after all those years since we last saw her as a toddler, and she's doing a great job, and we're enjoying a busy summer at the Family Complex in Lightfoot. So thank you very much for this. It's an honor to receive it.
Thank you for all that you and your staff do for our citizens to make it a greater, more amazing place to live. Next on the agenda, we have a appointment to the Hillsborough County Marine Law Enforcement Citizens Advisory Committee. There's one vacancy on the Hillsborough County Marine Law Enforcement Citizens Advisory Committee. Mr. Ron Smith, whose term is expiring, is eligible to serve an additional 3-year term and has indicated that he is interested. The city did not receive any other applications. If Mr. Smith is here, I don't see him. I know he also serves on our River Watch Task Force. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Ron Smith to the Hillsborough County Marine Law Enforcement Citizens Advisory Committee for a term extending from June 30th, 2017 until June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is approval of the June 6, 2017 City Council meeting minutes. If the minutes are acceptable, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the June 6th, 2017 meeting.
Motion by Councilmember Donahue. Is there a
Second.
second? Second by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The minutes are approved. We are now in the area of persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. Again, there's forms in the back. If you're interested in speaking, please fill them out, bring them to the city clerk to the far left. And when you do come up here and address, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address at the podium. And first up is Marcy Lieber, who would like to speak about the missed integrity payment. Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Marcy Lieber, 6624 Glencoe Drive. I was at the council meeting 2 weeks ago, and although I knew that things were not going well at the country club, I was shocked to hear just how bad it had gotten. This brought up some questions and concerns to me. We were told that Integrity had not made the April quarterly payment to the city, but no one, including the council, seemed to be aware of this. I'm curious as to whose job it was to keep track of whether these payments were being made, and when the April payment didn't come, was Integrity contacted, and were the council members notified? It worries me because in order to run a sound financial situation, you've got to keep track of whether the bills are being paid and whether everybody's got to keep an eye on things. And I assume, this is silly, but I assume that if I ever miss my city utility bill payment, somebody's going to let me know. And my utility bills don't run in the same category as the integrity payment that should have come in, did not, and now I guess that ship has sailed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up to address council is Annette Rennie, and I believe this is regarding city employees. Thank you, ma'am. You have 3 minutes. Name and address, please.
Okay. Annette Rennie, 9512 Woodland Ridge Drive. I'm here to thank several people in the city for everything they did to help me. I was contacted by a seller who didn't live in state to sell her house. When I went over there, it was a drug house, and the city had drug bust. I want to thank Officer Willie Mason and Doug Fowler for accompanying me and offering to accompany me, because when I went in that house, I saw things I have never seen before. It was not only structurally bad, but there were people in bedrooms and other things going on. The house had been broken into several times. These gentlemen were there for me. I would also like to mention Tom Baroni. He's probably the best code person we've ever had. He was there, he consulted with me, he helped me. He helped the seller who lived in 2 states away, who was elderly, not well, who had to drive down here and see her home that she had not seen for 2 years, and she was devastated. He worked with me hand in hand to help me. Charles Stevens, I want to thank you because you were out of town and I called you. I was so dismayed at what I found, and you answered my call as always and helped me with this. And as a city manager, I think that's outstanding. I've called on you more than once and you always help. I would also like to thank Andy Ross. He's not here, but as a liaison to the code board, he answered some questions. Last but not least, I want to mention Jamie Statz. Jamie came to my rescue. We were in such a mess. The house had to be boarded up. It was broken into every night through the back windows. He offered to buy it. He worked with the seller. He did things that a regular builder or buyer would never do to help this woman because he knew she was in distress. He is an honorable person. He's a good builder. I am so proud of him, and his dad should be very proud of him. Without him, this could not have been sold, closed, and on its way to the next step to improve the neighborhood and to improve the city, as he has done in many parts of this city. So, Jamie, I hope you're listening. Tom Baroni, I hope you're listening. And officers, I hope you're listening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next to speak is Mr. Jim Buton at 510 Hibiscus. That's what he would like to speak about. Name and address in 3 minutes, please.
Hi, good evening. Jim Buteyn, B-U-T-E-Y-N. I live at 516 Hibiscus Drive. The evening of June 13th, each of you received an email from me containing the profanity-filled comments that were made to me by one of the boarders at 510 Hibiscus. I hope that it offended you as much as it did me. Trust me when I tell you that I cleaned it up, and the total of what she said to me was much worse than what you read. On Sunday morning, June 18th, my dog and I started our usual walk. As we were approaching the intersection at Holland and Caroline, 3 of the dogs from 510 Hibiscus came flying around the corner, growling, barking, and baring teeth. All 3 of them immediately attacked my dog. All I could do was kick them and pour hot coffee on them until I could pick up my dog. We headed back to my house with the 3 dogs trying to bite at the back of my legs. As we passed 510 Hibiscus, where the owner was in her driveway, I yelled at her to put the dogs inside. She stared at me and said, "I'm doing the best I can." Once again, she purposely let the dogs run at large. Fortunately, my dog did not have any puncture wounds. I called Temple Terrace Police Department and made County Animal Control aware of the incident since they have multiple cases against the homeowner. That evening, I was grilling in the opening of my garage since it was still sprinkling when the female boarder and this sex offender that live at 510 walked up the street. As they passed by my house, she said loud enough for me to hear, "Too bad our dogs didn't kill his expletive ugly dog this morning." That will get my attention. I asked her if she wanted to repeat that to my face, and received, "You just tried to burn me with that grill, and I have a witness." this gives you folks an idea of what we are dealing with at this property. I consider Temple Terrace a very safe city to walk in, just not in my immediate neighborhood right now. I now carry 2 phones with me. One has a speed dial to Temple Terrace Police Department, who are wonderful. And I start the video camera on the other one until I'm out of the neighborhood. Our neighbors would like an update on, from the last council meeting, when it was discussed for code violation to be applied to that house regarding occupancy, on has it been done and when it was done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up to speak regarding Greco Middle School is former Councilmember Allison Fernandez. Name and address, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Allison Fernandez, 6601 Heatherton Court. I am here to invite you all and those in the community who are interested. Greco Middle School has been awarded a makeover by a company. It's ABBVIE. I don't know how to say it, but it's a corporation that has selected Greco to do some community service work, and they're remaking a part of our media center to be a Lego interactive media center area. It'll be a reading area, but also interactive, a 3D printer, et cetera. And it really falls in line with the STEM curriculum that we already have there. And we hope that this will help engage and encourage our students to be more academically motivated and more invested in their studies. We want to invite you, it's 1:45 is the ribbon cutting on Thursday afternoon. I know it's short notice, but they literally just sent out the promotional information yesterday, and I sent it all on to you all immediately. But I'm excited because most of you are aware, we don't have a tremendous amount of community involvement in the school, in that we don't have a lot of local parents with their students attending that school. And we look to businesses and community partners to help make up some of the difference in our volunteering and our enhancement and enrichment. So this is one of those areas where an organization has stepped up to help provide something interesting and innovative. And I know that the kids, if any of you were able to attend our Career Expo in the spring, we had a 3D printer there. Thank you to the city library for bringing that. And the kids just couldn't get their hands on enough, and they're just very interested in technology. And this is a way that the partnerships with our businesses in the community are helping to enrich. And we invite you all to come. And it's in the Media Center, which you come in off of Fowler Avenue. Most of you will know there will be no parking off of Fowler Avenue, so you come in on the cafeteria side off of Gillette. But the Media Center's off of Fowler, so hope to see you all there.
Thank you.
And just to repeat, the meeting, the ribbon cutting's at 1:45 on Thursday, if I heard you correctly,
Yes, this Thursday,
correct?
1:45.
Thank you. Next up is Pat Garrett, who would like to speak on TT, I think the Temple Terrace Market. You have name and address, please, in 3 minutes.
My name's Patrick Garrett, 6403 Josephine Arbor Place. Just kind of speaking in general in terms of Temple Terrace, our area, our community, it kind of falls in line with Allison Fernandez was saying. Talking about the community redevelopment, the downtown parcels, everything of that nature. I like the discussion we had before council, the open mind, looking for the future, because I think where we've been and where we've gone, we can do nothing but go forward and do better. I think whatever happens in our downtown needs to complement the rest of Temple Terrace. Temple Terrace is a crown jewel. Like Mr. Pagorich said, 40% of the people will be upset what happens, but majority rules. I think what we see with the Innovative Alliance here, USF, everything being built in and around us. Our schools are horrible, okay? Our schools, no one wants to move to Temple Terrace because we have horrible schools. You can't build a community without folks moving here, buying into, remodeling, building new homes, having a community, people that buy in, pay taxes. I own a commercial building right here. I pay taxes on 2 properties. Okay, I'm all in. I'm second generation here. But I think really having the unity that you have and everybody looking at the Cushman Wakefield, looking at the brokers, looking at the market, having something move forward. I travel the Southeast, I see a lot. We have schools, we have pools, we have open land, we have so much here that we have the resources, we just have to expose them. We don't have to be like New Tampa and redevelop and build from scratch. We got it right here looking us in the eye. And we need to use it. But if you don't have the young families moving here and you don't have the resources, you don't have some amenities, okay, and you don't have that, you're not going to allure and attract those people that want to spend that money, Carrollwood, New Tampa, et cetera. So I'm in. I love the place. I want to see it happen. I don't want any more apartments. We have enough. I don't want people renting. I want people buying and paying taxes, just like I do. Thank you much.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, and again, I have two final speakers that are going to speak. If there's anyone else who wants to speak, please fill out a form in the back. This is regarding downtown redevelopment. Travis Malloy. You have 3 minutes, please, and name and address.
Hi, Travis Malloy, 206 South Lockmore. I just wanted to speak about the redevelopment really quick. Sorry I missed the meeting earlier. But it sounds like it kind of got covered. I was hoping that things would be held off a little bit and we could stick to the original plan of high-density vertical mixed-use development down there. I know a lot of the proposals weren't in that vein, and even the one that actually did meet the criteria didn't seem like the best deal for what we were doing here. I just kind of hope we have the long-term benefit of the town in mind, of the city. Vertical mixed use really seems like it would be a benefit for the town, and I think that if any of these plans don't meet that plan, then they should be not seriously considered. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I have Jonathan Rushneck, who wants to speak on the city manager contract. Name and address, please, in 3 minutes.
Yes, it's Jonathan Rushneck, 606 Herschel Drive. And I come to you this evening in regards to the upcoming contract expiration of our city manager. As the city is trying to tighten its purse strings, it should be noted that the city manager's salary is $140,000. That figure does not include the sole use of the city-owned vehicle, a 2015 Ford F-250, allowing him to commute to and from his home in Riverview, approximately 18 miles from Temple Terrace. Now, the salaries for the city managers of Dunedin and Plant City are also comparable. However, their populations are about 30% more than Temple Terrace, and they have thriving downtowns. The F-250 Mr. Stevenson uses for his daily commute, and graciously paid for by all of us, averages about 6 miles per gallon, and that's according to data obtained from Lynn Boswell, the finance director for the city. This is hardly fiscal responsibility. Not even living in Temple Terrace, Mr. Stevenson appears to not have any fiduciary responsibilities to the residents of the city. This was evident at the May 16th City Council meeting where it was mentioned that Mr. Stevenson unilaterally approved an expenditure of $208,000 without consulting City Council. Mr. Chalora applauded this and stated, "Sometimes things have to happen." That was not commendable. That was terminable. The situation with the property at 510 Hibiscus Drive is another example of the systemic complacency. He is failing to enforce the city code with this and many other situations. If he were a resident and taxpayer of the city, might he be more vested? Mr. Stevenson does not have to live next door to these problems. Mr. Stevenson's experience as a city manager should be seriously reviewed. Prior to starting the position in 2016, his experience was in construction and development. His previous experience with the city was as the Director of Community Development. Take a look at the situation with downtown redevelopment today and explain to the residents at Temple Terrace how Mr. Stevenson did a commendable job. I encourage each member of City Council to put aside any cronyism and do what is right for the residents by selecting a more qualified city manager. The taxpayers of the city of Temple Terrace deserve and demand better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have another person who'd like to speak on an item not on the agenda. Again, if there's anyone else who'd like to speak on items on the agenda, please pick up a form in the back. This is from Annette Rennie. This is regarding Mr. Stevenson. You have 3 minutes. Your name and address, please.
Annette Rennie, 9512 Woodland Ridge Drive. I'd like to respond to this gentleman. Mr. Stevens' contract calls for him to be reviewed in a year, and that's when he was told that he would be able to move, that he could move. We did not make him move at the beginning because his contract was for a year and a half. He did not know it was going to be renewed. If you were here, you would have known that. The other thing about that is
Please allow the
Mr.
speaker to continue speaking, please,
Thank you,
without
Bob.
interruption.
The other thing about Mr. Stevens is every neighbor that I know and every person that I know who has called on Mr. Stevens, even when he's been out of town or on a weekend, he's responded. He's there, unlike the other city manager we had. So I don't know why you're going after him, because he's done everything according to his contract. I am proud of him. I think that he's the best we've had in a long time. And if you haven't tried to get along with him, you ought to try, because he responds. He responds. I actually had bad situations with Sieber. As a real estate agent, I go to him frequently. He's always there, even when he's out of town. So I'm very opposed to what he said, and I think it's an insult. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to items not on the agenda before I close out this item? And please, in the future, I'll remind everybody, comments from the, on items on the agenda are directed to council, not to make it personal to other members in the audience. Okay, thank you. We have item number 4, communications and petitions. We have none. Consent agenda, we have no items on the consent agenda. Public hearings. First public hearing is item 6, public hearings, ordinances, and resolutions. First item is a resolution, number A, letter A, approving a budget adjustment to cover demolition costs for the property located at 1113 North River Hills Drive. I would like to ask the city manager to explain what is the process and what the resolution is regarding.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I don't mean to bore anybody, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background with this home. I think everybody is aware of what's been happening with this structure. The process of addressing this dilapidated home at 113 North River Hills Drive began in August of 2015, when the city approached the owner concerning the condition of the residence. In September of 2015, the city posted the dwelling as uninhabitable and attempted to work with the owner to get the structure into a condition that it could be occupied. Being unsuccessful at that attempt, the city pursued legal action against the owner on the posting and proceeding to secure the dwelling to discourage the owner to habitate in the dwelling. Upon no action from the owner to correct the unhealthy conditions of the dwelling, the city pursued an inspection warrant to substantiate the conditions of the dwelling. The city was successful in obtaining that warrant, and upon inspection confirmed the condition of the home to be such that it did not meet the criteria of the code, section 8-167. We at that point suggested demolition of the structure. The dwelling was subsequently placarded again in April of 2017, ordering the demolition. The owner was afforded due process. To date, the owner nor the mortgagee have shown interest in resolving the issues with the dwelling by neither appealing the condemnation order nor effecting repairs on the dwelling. Staff is recommending that the city move forward to approve the demolition of the structure. We have secured 3 bids to accomplish this task and is requesting approval of the attached resolution approving the use of unbudgeted funds to complete the demolition. This amounts to $8,000. We provided you with 3 independent bids that were procured by our building official. We are recommending using Bayside Construction. The building department has a working relationship with Bayside. We know this company. They've done work here before. We've got funds, the funds for this demolition will be drawn out of 001-1321-524.62-41. With that, Mr. Vice Mayor, I would ask council to approve the resolution.
Okay, before we get to that point, I would like to know if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address council on this matter. Mr. Congilio, name and address, please. You have 3 minutes.
William Congilio, 1115 North River Hills Drive next door. How are you, everybody? I've missed you. It's been a while. Leave you for 8 weeks and Dirty Harry's the mayor. Just kidding. I appreciate you picking up the slack.
I'm the vice mayor acting as mayor in the absence of the mayor.
And can't wait, right? I understand. I understand. Appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's been a long and winding road. Actually, it's been a liability accruing exponentially for 7 years, I think, since 2010. City's taken some action. I appreciate that. I know that in budgetary concerns that $8,000 could be spent on a lot of things. But this as an accruing liability, I think it can be turned into an asset, not only for the immediate neighbors. I'm pretty sure our property values are going to escalate more than that the second that this structure is gone. But also, since the mortgagee has not stepped up, hopefully the city can take control of this, auction it off, and get something built there that will create some positive revenue for the city. Just wanted to say thanks for everyone's support, and just from a personal note, my personal experience, I will echo positive support from Mr. Stevenson, and Tom Baroni is just wonderful in my opinion also. So thank you, and I encourage you to vote this.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to council discussion. Council members, we have anybody who wants to start first?
I just have a question.
I'll go,
So-
Ms. Donahue, and then Councilmember Gorlich.
Okay, and the question is really not about the bid. The question is what happens next, because the Bank of America actually owns this property, correct? So it's just an empty lot for them to, they will take over the lot, or?
Well, the bank doesn't own the property. Mr. Urbanchik owns the property. The bank has they have a mortgage on the property. There's also a very substantial IRS lien on the property. And Bank of America also has an investor, Fannie Mae, in the property. So we've communicated regularly with Bank of America, which is aware of the demolition. They've also advised us that their investor, Fannie Mae, is aware of the demolition, and there's no objection with respect to going forward with the demolition that's been raised by either. So,
Okay, well, who will take the responsibility if the property is overgrown, you know, if it?
well, the representative from Bank of America that Mr. Stevenson and I have spoken to have indicated that they have a contractor that Bank of America has retained that will mow the property, if I recall the discussion correctly, on a monthly basis. So that's the representation that's been made to us, that there will be regular maintenance done of the property. Of course, that's just me passing along information that we've received from the bank in a discussion. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Gorlich.
Just want to follow up on this Bank of America. You said that they were aware and that Fannie Mae was aware that the house was going to be demoed. Are they also aware we're sending them the bill?
yes.
Okay.
Now, they haven't indicated that they will pay the bill, but we've explained to them that we are sending them the bill.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Chilora.
If this resolution is approved this evening, the contractor is on board to begin, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. The contractor is waiting in the wings for orders from us to move. We'd given him June 27th as the day to mobilize.
Is there any other discussion amongst the board? Seeing none, the recommendation from staff is the budget adjustment for demolition costs for the property located at 1113 North River Hills Drive to be approved in the amount of $8,000 payable to Bayside Construction of Tampa Bay Incorporated, and that the city clerk be directed to initiate a lien on the property in this amount. If there's no other discussion, and if acceptable, I will entertain a motion to go ahead and go with the staff recommendation.
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Donahue. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion is carried. We're going to move on to item B, which is the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 9/30/2016. I believe we're going to have Finance Director Linda Boswell and Jeff Wolf with Moore Stevens Lovelace, PA, will present. If that's incorrect, Mr. Stevenson, let me know, but. You, sir, just give us your name and.
My name is Jeff Wolf. I'm the audit manager with Moore Stevens Lovelace.
And it's going to maybe take a minute for us to get the presentation up. Okay. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I just want to thank you for allowing MSL to serve as your external auditors. Professional standards require us to communicate certain things to those charged with governance and before the audit and also at the end of the audit. So this slide really covers those communications. Our responsibility as auditors is to perform an audits in accordance with general accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards, and also to issue opinion on the fairness of the presentation of those financial statements. Management's responsibility is to prepare those financial statements and take responsibility for those statements, and also to develop internal control and to design and implement those internal controls and also monitor those controls. As part of our audit, we also do testing on internal controls and compliance. However, it's just to design our testing. We don't actually issue opinion on those controls. Significant matters, we had no disagreements with management, no uncorrected misstatements. We did have several corrected misstatements, which leads into our first comment. We had one material weakness, which is found in your internal control report, which I'll discuss more when we get to it. And also we had 2 management letter comments that are just suggestions for improvements, which I'll discuss in further detail. Management also made certain representations to us about their responsibilities. Initially, Andrew Laughlin of CLA was charged with oversight of the audit, but then as Lynn came on board as the finance director, she also took some oversight of the final audit. The audit schedule was pretty much on track. We're about a month behind, but that was just really out of our control and control of the finance department. All right, moving on to our deliverables. On page 12 and 14 of the CAFR is our independent auditors report. We had an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, with the opinion that you want. Next is our report on internal control, financial reporting, and compliance, which is page 159 through 161. That's where you'll find our first comment, which relates to audit adjustments. Last year, it was reported as a significant deficiency, but this year it was bumped up to a material weakness. This really relates to several things. As the audit was performed, we noticed several accounts that had to be adjusted because of our audit procedures. Those adjustments were made, but it's really important. I think with the turnover, there was a lack of oversight in the finance department that resulted to these issues. But as you can see by management response, they believe that they have corrected these issues, and it's something we'll be definitely focusing on next year's audit. The next report is on page 162 and 164. That's our management letter required by the Auditor General. We had 2 comments related to that as well. Both were also from last year, just overall financial condition assessment. The Auditor General requires that the auditors perform a condition assessment. It's a matrix of 27 indicators, and this year the city had 12 unfavorable indicators and 7 inconclusive out of, the 26 indicators. But we had this comment last year. It actually got a little bit worse, so it's just, overall, just continues to monitor the condition of the city. And then lastly, our comment was on the balloon payment coming up that's due in 2018. This was also a comment we had last year. We just, suggest that you get with your financial advisors, and, as rates are starting to tick up. You probably want to look into refinancing that debt, for a long term. Lastly, on page 165 is our independent accountant's report. This just relates to compliance with Florida statutes for investments, and we had no findings in that report. Just real quick, just some overall financial highlights. Really, this is a citywide analysis, which I say is really more comparable to a business. The current ratios this year, you can see drop significantly. This is really just more of a timing issue with some accounts payable that hit at the end of the year. So it's not, it looks drastically different, but if you took a snapshot a month later, it would be more comparable. Other key thing, you're still, with the implementation of GASB 68 in the pension statements, you're still showing a large negative unrestricted balance. But however, that did improve by $4 million in the current year. Overall, you had a change in that position in the governmental activities by $0.6 million and 1.2 in your business type activities. Your business type activities, which would be your water and sanitation, was pretty comparable from year to year. On your general fund, on pages 30, 35, which is your main operating account for the city, you can see pretty comparable to last year. You might notice the 2.7 in non-spendable, that relates to the country club loan that was reclassed in the current year and showing it as your non-spendable because we don't believe you'll be receiving that loan in the near future, so that's required to be shown as non-spendable, so it's not available for future use. Also, really the most important thing this slide is really just to show your assigned and unassigned fund balance as a total expenditures and transferred out. It increased by 4.4% in the current year. Page 36 is the general fund budget comparison. Compared to budget, you were $0.5 million above the final budget for revenues and transfers in, and for total expenditures and transfers out, you were below your final budget by $2.9 million, which provide a net change in fund balance of $3.4 million compared to budget. Lastly, in the enterprise funds, page 40 to 44 of the CAFR, you can see for the most part pretty comparable from last year. Net position in your water and sewer utility increased by $1.2 million, and your operating income increased by $0.6 million. Your sanitation fund was very similar to last year with a $0.1 million increase in that position and a $1.1 million increase in operating income. But at this point, if there's any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council on this matter? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council? Seeing none, council members, your comments, please. Is there anyone? Council member Donahue.
Not sure where to begin.
Microphone.
Okay, that's where I began, so that you can hear me. So I have a question on, a couple of questions. I want to know the timing of this. Did the CAFR go to the audit committee? And haven't heard anything. Who is our audit committee now? Because I know we had one.
It was my understanding that the audit committee just elected to hear it at the council meeting, and they did not wish to meet. We are available to meet after, though. I mean, we just actually issued last week, so there hasn't been a whole lot of time to meet, but we'll be more than willing to meet with anybody if requested. But it was my understanding that they did not want to meet.
I can answer that. Myself, Mr. Sieber, Finance Director, and a citizen, it makes up your audit committee. Due to the timing of getting this out, we elected to not hold an official CAFR meeting due to schedules and didn't want to hold up getting to you guys.
Okay.
So we basically said we will forego having the official meeting before the CAFR gets out. We all said that we will look at it, and if there's questions, et cetera, we will have a meeting thereafter. Based on what you saw tonight, I don't anticipate any gotchas or surprises. I do have a question, though. Last year, if, just, it's quick, you don't have to answer right now, but
Okay.
you can, but just so I'm done. Last year, those charts you mentioned about the comparative or lifestyle and all that stuff, what page is that on?
Oh, it's on the top of the presentation, each,
It's in the report.
Aren't they included in the report as well, in the CAFR
in-
itself?
yeah, I mean, these are extracted out, so it's not an exact match of this, but if
Okay.
you look at, the pages are referenced on the top of the presentation of where I'm pulling that
No,
information from.
Last year, there was a very simple bar chart that compared, I think, 12 different items. Lifestyle, dollars per taxpayer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's probably in the stats, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
If
I'll
you
look in the
let me know
stats.
which, it's probably in the stats section, but I'd be more than happy to.
I'll grab last year's and tell you what I'm looking for.
Because it would be in this year as well. I mean, usually your MD&A is your brief summary of your overall city, and then stats will have your detailed information
Okay. That's
related to population, things like
I'll
that.
pull out last year's and see if I can't find the page.
Back to Councilmember Donahue.
Okay, thank you. So you had, did we hire Clifton Larson Allen this year?
We did hire the other accountants in order to help close out last year's accounts. Before Moore came in, we were not at a point to close out the CAFR.
I
That's
thought
it.
we let that firm go last year.
We let that firm go, but again, I initiated an agreement with them to have them come in and help us close out last year.
Did-
Rather than have our current director try to manipulate all the data that she has no idea what was there.
I understand having somebody come in. I just didn't know why we hired the firm that we let go. We actually fired them and hired
Well,
somebody else.
We did just that, yes, ma'am.
Let me try to clarify. We did let them go last year, but due to their institutional knowledge of the accounts and where things were and where the status of things were, we brought them back just for closeout. You won't hear their name again.
That's all they were brought in
Yeah,
for,
they're
was just to
brought in
help close out.
Because, again, I don't know if you've ever been through one of these, but institutional knowledge goes a long way. He's shaking his head yes. So we brought them in for that specific purpose. That was the most efficient way of closing out the books for the last year. They will not be brought in for 2017. And, unless, some of the staff changes there, you'll likely never hear their name in City Hall again.
Okay, well, institutional knowledge is great as long as last year, they were very slow, and we were very late in getting this, and so now here we are again.
I think it was two years ago. We were the firm last year.
Okay.
And the delay last year was related to the FRS pension statements.
Right.
They weren't released till I think May, so everybody was late last year.
And that was a state thing, that wasn't.
Yeah, that was a
Terrace.
state.
Yeah.
I remember, okay.
But,
All right, well, I had to ask the question because
Yep.
that name, I remember that name. We don't fire people very often around here. At least
yeah, as the
at least
external
council
auditors, we
doesn't.
can't be involved in any of the reconciling
Right.
for independence issues.
Okay, so I'm really drilling down here, sorry.
Sure, no
I
problem.
know you have the information in your head, so I know that we had budgeted $50,000 for auditing and accounting, and I don't know if that included Clifton Larson Allen, or, I think you're pretty close to that, cost-wise, so is that,
Councilmember Donahue, I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to look into that for you.
okay,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, let me talk about the material weakness.
Sure.
According to the letter, you state that there are 3 levels, and I guess the worst one is material weakness. How does that affect our ability to have how does it affect our position as we go into the negotiations for refinancing our loan?
That's something you probably have to ask your finance counsel. It could result in a slightly higher rate. I'm not sure. That's really more of a, your investment advisors would be able to answer that question. but it is, something that they will review the CAFR.
Okay,
But yes, that is the highest of levels.
yeah, that's a
Just,
big red.
Just to kind of interject something, we've had a couple of meetings with our financial advisors already. They'll get a copy of this, we'll sit down, and we'll start talking seriously about what we're going to do with that loan.
Well, it's my next question. Have we started the process to refinance the loan?
We haven't started the process to refinance the loan. Some of the information that we're trying to feed to them is really somewhat speculative on what we anticipate happening in the redevelopment area. That has a lot to do with it. If we can cash out a bunch of cash, obviously it changes the scenario about going after a loan. But we have started those conversations with them. We've given them a couple different scenarios to work off of. Now that they've got a CAFR here, we'll share with them, and we'll have another subsequent meeting with them.
And with a loan, it probably wouldn't be as significant. It's more in the bond market is where the rating agencies pay more attention to that. It may not affect the loan at all. But again, that would be something your financial advisor would be able to answer.
Well, your letter said we should get going.
Yes,
So I took
that's
that
what-
to heart.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it basically, it spells it out.
Yeah,
We need
it's,
to
you know,
move
if it's-
before the interest rate begin to escalate, and it's time. The payment will be due 2018, which, right around the corner. 6 months from now. Right, okay. All right, so it also indicates that according to the rules of the Auditor General, that you have provided us, you've provided certain matters to the management in a separate management letter and independent accountant's report. Do we have that?
Everything's in the CAFR.
We have all of
Yes.
that here?
You have the independent accountant's report, the management letter. That's in the back. It's referenced in the presentation as well. That's where the two other comments are related to the bond to the note and also the financial condition assessment.
Okay, so
But you have
those-
everything.
Those
Page-
specific letters are
Page
here?
Yes.
162 and 165.
Okay.
Yeah, you have
all right.
everything.
Okay, thank you. Well, considering, I'm glad to know that I have those, thank you. And I think this probably, stop me if you want me to say this now, but I know this ties into Mrs. Lieber's comments. As per our charter, I would like to see, and since we're headed in the direction of, we've got the CAFR in front of us now, and we're headed into the budget negotiations, talks, discussions, whatever you want to call them, I'd like to see the quarterly financial report. I have not seen one. I don't know that they've been given to us for the last 3 quarters. So that's basically October, November, January to March, and March to June. And I'm sure that would include the payments and the dates that Integrity made their payments. So I have not seen that, and so I'm asking for that. If you could, Mr. Stevenson, provide us with that.
Yes, ma'am, I'll get you what you need. Say one more time what you're looking for.
I'm looking for the quarterly financial report, actual to budget, for the last 3 quarters of this fiscal year. So you can either go October to June, or you can break it down quarterly, whatever is easier for you and our finance director. And because I specifically want to see I want to see all of it, but I want to see the payments and dates from the Integrity for this fiscal year.
Okay, you have any?
No, I think that's enough. Thank you.
Are there any other council member comments on the CAFR? Seeing none, the recommendation to City Council is to accept and approve by resolution the comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR, for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2016. If this is acceptable, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
It's moved by Councilmember Grolich. Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any further discussion from council? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Thank you for the presentation. We're going to move on to item C, which is a continuation of a, public hearing and resolution approving the Temple Terrace downtown, a partial replat. Mr. Stevenson?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'm not quite sure how to approach this. This is a continuation of a final plat for a final plat for downtown Temple Terrace. It's actually a partial replat of Temple Terrace Estates. We presented this to you some time ago. We asked for an extension to June 20th at that point in time so that we would be able to see where we were at and kind of contemplating what we were going to get from responses on the RFP. Certainly, if we had someone in the RFP that came in and wanted to give us a fair price on the ground and want to take up the whole parcel, we have a survey descriptive of that now, so a plat wouldn't have been necessary. We asked for this to be heard at this meeting so that we can get this plat together. And really, if we're going in the direction that we heard earlier with trying to do this on a land disposal situation, we believe the plat would be a good mechanism to use. If someone wanted whatever lots 25 through 40, we can work off the plat rather than go out and have to pay for surveys and wait for surveys to happen. That would be the primary reason that we would end up platting this property. The plat only involves Area A. It does not involve the other areas, but it establishes lots and blocks that we can work off of. And again, contemplating from what I heard earlier, I think this is probably the best time to do this. So.
Okay, since this is a continuation of a public hearing, we've heard what council, we'll hear from council shortly. We've heard what the city manager will be bringing on this item, and this is a continuation of a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to address council on this matter regarding the replat of the city-owned downtown property? Seeing none, I believe it's appropriate I close the public hearing, and I'll ask council members for any comments. Mr. Connolly.
Mr. Boss, one thing to note that will need to be modified, both for purposes of the resolution and the replat itself. Both documents make reference to the mayor. The plat itself makes reference to Mayor Kim Linebaugh. So the plat would need to be modified to reflect Robert Boss as vice mayor, and the resolution itself would also needs to be modified to make reference to you serving in capacity as vice mayor and acting mayor.
Thank you. Is there any council comment regarding the replat? If none, we need to make a motion. I guess the motion is going to have to go ahead and address the changes that you recommended in there.
Yeah, I think you could move to approve the plat and the resolution with the modification taking into account the fact that the Vice Mayor, Robert Boss, will be executing documents in lieu of Kim Linebaugh, who resigned as mayor.
Okay, if acceptable, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution approving the final plat SP number 16-02 for Temple Terrace downtown, a partial replat of Temple Terrace Estates, with the caveats that the names be changed from Mayor Kim Linebaugh to Vice Mayor Robert Boss where appropriate.
So moved.
And then the motion by Councilmember Gorich, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Quick question, Mr. Ross.
Mr. Chuler.
My question is, how flexible is this plat, depending on what comes back to us in the future, based on whatever kind of proposals we have? Can a lot be split in half? I'm looking at these very thin 26-foot wide lots by 220 feet deep. Can those lots be altered, modified? I just don't want to do the same process twice is what I'm trying to get at. So I don't know that answer, that's why I'm asking it. Or if you had to put an access road or whatever it is, depending on what's there. Just an example, when the previous developer was just east of Main Street, they wanted to put residential with stores, and on the backside they wanted to put a road. If and I'm not saying that's what's going to go here, but I'm using that as an example. If something like that was to happen, would that have to be replatted, or would this accommodate this, the way you've laid this out? Would this accommodate such a, does this have a lot of flexibility is what I'm trying to say?
You could always, you can always replat the plat. I mean, if it, in order to accommodate whatever situation comes across our table here. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is set in stone and this is what we have to go with. If we get something in that is a desirable project, we can certainly modify this to whatever degree we need to.
The starting point.
I mean, it's just, it's another process we'd have to go through, but it's an easier process than having a survey done. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there any other discussion from council? We already have a motion to second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I was saying aye also, I didn't get time to get it in. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to item D, which is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance rezoning RZP 17-01, 11709 North 51st Street from R9 to R7.5. At this point, because it is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing. We'll need to swear.
The chief is raising his hand. Is he okay? Okay. Sorry.
I need to, the clerk needs to swear in any witnesses and ask for disclosures from city council, so I'll have the clerk swear in as soon as she's ready. And sometimes they talk too quickly. If there's anyone who's going to testify regarding this item, please raise your hand so that you can be sworn in by the city clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. We're going to go to Senior Planner Michael Kakowski will present this to us.
And before he does, could we just have quick disclosures from members of city council?
Okay, I had that, okay.
I've had none.
Had that, forgot.
Thank you.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
Thank you.
Jumped ahead. Thank you. Michael Kakowski, please.
Good evening, Michael Kokoski, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department, here to present RZP 1701. Request is to rezone property from residential 9 to R-75. Next slide. This just shows the background and location. The purpose, the property currently has a single family and a duplex, which is intended to remain at this time. However, the rezoning is being requested for proposed future development of the portion of the property. Property currently is 0.8 acres. This is just showing the survey, showing the existing buildings. This is just showing the general area. This is north side, on 51st Street, east of 51st Street, and north of Fowler. This is the existing single-family home is on the left side, and the duplex is on the right side. This is the home across the street, which is the, most of the neighborhood is R9 in that, for that area. Community Development recommends approval as requested. Plan Commission found the request consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the applicant owner concur with staff, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Before we get to there, are there any comments or questions from the general public? Are there any comments or questions from the general public? Yes, sir. Go ahead, please. State your name and address, please.
For the record, Peter Pensa, AICP certified planner with Avid Group. We're the planners and engineers on the project. We concur with staff's recommendation. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I ask council members for any comments. Is there any comments regarding this rezoning?
So they're just taking,
Councilmember Donahue.
thank you, they're just taking a small piece of this property? That's the way I understand it.
No, they're rezoning the entire property to R7.5. The intent is, which is the next agenda item, is the intent is to use the south portion to split the property in the future and use the south portion as part of retention pond for the proposed commercial development along Fowler, and the duplex will be demolished in
Okay.
order to accomplish that.
Okay, I guess that's why I had them confused. I knew that something else was coming. Okay,
Right.
all right, thank you.
Is there any other discussion by council? Seeing no other discussion, I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and read the title of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 0.80 acres of property located on the east side of North 51st Street, approximately 240 feet north of East Fowler Avenue, with an addressable location of 11709 North 51st Street, from zoning classification R-9 residential 9 to R-7.5 residential 7.5, providing for amendment of the official zoning map of the city, providing a severability clause, effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading. If it is approved, the ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Is there a motion?
Move to approve on first reading.
Moved by Councilmember Gorlish. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Again, this will come as a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Moving on to item E, and I believe we're going to have Mr. Kukowski up here again. This is a request for city council comments on a preliminary site plan, SPR 1701, redevelopment of 5100 to 5122 East Fowler Avenue. Sir.
Good evening, Michael Kukowski, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. This is a preliminary site plan, SPR 17-01. The owners are Andrew Hupp of Epic Retail Fowler LLC and Evie Ward, trustee. The applicant is Peter Pensa, is the Avid Group. He's the planner that's representing them. Currently, this shows the background and general location. It's actually, well, there's two things. Well, there's a lot going on in this property because it's split between Tampa and Temple Terrace. Temple Terrace, the land use is commercial, primarily where the existing CDBs is located, and then the R9, which is the residential property, which we just proposed to change to R7.5. Actually, no, the land use is R9. The zoning is CG for the commercial and R9 for residential, and proposed to R7-5. In Tampa, it's CMU 1235 is the land use, which is mixed use, and the zoning in Tampa is commercial general. Location generally covers the currently two properties with two different buildings on the properties. The overall site is 2.46 acres, and it's split between Temple Terrace and Tampa, approximately about the same acreage. This showed the outline. The blue lines, you can see, is the residential piece that we just discussed previously, and the yellow line represents the border of the proposed overall development. This is it's kind of hard to see this site plan here, but we have the site plan, which they show it's split between Temple Terrace and Tampa. Basically, the city's regulations apply to its piece of the property, and Tampa's regulations apply to their portion of the property, with some exceptions. That's the house, which will plan to remain. The duplex will be planned to be removed, and that will be where the retention pond, landscaping, and wall is proposed. This is the current shopping center at 5100 Plaza with the CDBs, Copper Top, and other restaurants. This is the other portion of the property currently at the Express Lube. Part of the proposal is to essentially replace that with a new Express Lube. And the, actually, sorry, to go back on this portion of the property, would be a proposed PDQ restaurant and an unspecified retail and / restaurant use in the middle. The applicants haven't found a tenant for the middle building yet. This is showing the elevations. The buildings, as proposed, currently are completely within the city of Tampa's limits and would be based on Tampa's regulations. But this is just the elevations for the PDQ. This is the retail restaurant use in the middle. This is the proposed auto service building, which would be the eastern portion of the site. Staff advises City Council to allow the applicant to further explain the proposed development of the site. Staff has no other information to present at this time. We'll stand for questions.
Okay, do we have the applicant here who would like to continue the discussion before we go to public comment?
Mike, can I put the site plan?
Put the site plan. Yeah, just go to the left.
Okay, good evening. For the record again, Peter Pence, AICP certified planner with Avid Group, the planners and engineers on the project. To answer your question from the previous item, part of this application here is, the intent is that the south 75 feet of Annette Ward's property will be purchased and used for stormwater retention. I don't think I can use this as a pointer, but you'll see on the top of the plan, basically where the jog is, in the property line there, there's a heavier black line that goes across. That's an existing retaining wall that is out there where the commercial properties that are existing today step down to the residential. That northern strip where we're showing retention pond proposed is currently where the duplex structure is located. So as part of the project, that duplex will be demolished and a stormwater pond will be built there, as well as landscape buffering for the overall project. Ms. Ward lives in the house on the northern portion of the property. She'll retain ownership of that, continue to live there. This is an unusual project. There's 6 parcels involved in the project, 3 in the city of Tampa, 3 in the city of Temple Terrace. In 20 years of doing this kind of work, both in public sector and private sector, I have only run across this in 3 other occasions. And this one is probably the most unusual of all the ones that I have done. We have met with staff from both cities fairly regularly on and off for a couple of years now, talking about investigating what would need to be done to have the project move forward. The property, if you're familiar with it, is an older center. Its economic life has come to an end and is in need of redevelopment. The current property owner is the one who is redeveloping this property and will retain ownership of the 3 new buildings and the land that they're on. As staff has pointed out, there are 3 buildings proposed, as you can see on the plan. In order to address public safety issues that came up from the two cities, it was decided that the buildings should be located within one jurisdiction, so there wouldn't be an issue of which fire department, which police department should respond. And the Planning Commission has a policy where they like to see the buildings up towards the street, so it made sense to move it up as well. So that's why you see basically a 0 lot line on the rear of the Tampa parcels for where the buildings are located. We also, at the request of staffs, had tried to lay out the parking lots and everything, even to have so that parking stalls are entirely in one jurisdiction or another. And so what was decided after the initial submittal, which was originally done to City of Tampa standards for the entire site, it was decided that the 2 cities should review the portions within their respective jurisdictions through their processes. So in Tampa, that means we're going through a plan development. Copy of that application and all the supporting document has been provided to Temple Terrace staff during that review. They participated in the DRC meeting at Tampa. And we have submitted that with each step. And of course here, it's the preliminary site plan, and then it'll be the final site plan, the construction plan. And so the idea is that the two processes will dovetail together, and when they're both ready, when both cities are ready to approve construction plans, they'll be approved basically simultaneously. The Temple Terrace portion of the site, we meet the parking and landscaping standards for the most part. Staff did have a couple comments, a few comments for revisions to the landscaping, in particular, some related to tree coverage. We feel we can meet those standards. I didn't really have any concerns with the recommendation, the technical recommendations that they had, with the exception of one landscape island, which is located behind Building B. I feel from a safety perspective that one should be retained to protect the vehicle on that road where the drive aisle does shift. Other than that, we feel we can meet the recommendations that staff has. And we're here to receive any feedback that you may have on it.
I think before we get to staff discussion and ask for more information from you or anything, I'm going to ask if there are any comments or questions from the general public on this item. Are there anybody in the audience want to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to council members for comments and discussion on the presentation we're seeing here between our very obviously mixed use of properties at its finest, when two jurisdictions have responsibility over one kind of business that's going on. So I'll open up to our council member comments.
I just have one question.
Councilmember Donahue.
It's about the traffic control.
Yes.
Does that change? Does it move? It stays exactly where it is now? I'm familiar with that street. I see it was listed in the presentation.
Yes, the traffic control device is going to remain where it is. The proposed wall is going to, there will be no access from the residential property. That's the stormwater pond. The proposed wall and landscaping will be along 51st Street. So the only access on 51st Street is going to be essentially the existing access that's there for the commercial piece, which is before the traffic control device.
Okay.
So there's going to be no change to that.
Okay, good.
Any other comments from council? I do have a couple comments, and again, we see businesses coming in and out. Just from an overhead view of what everything that's going to happen here is, having worked for the police department for many years, we all know well and good who's getting called, and it's not the city of Tampa. It's the city of Temple Terrace who's going to be there first and is going to respond to anything, whether it's in the parking lot or in the business, just as it happens now. People call from the parking lot when fights happen there, and we respond first, and Tampa gets there. So what we're doing now, though, is we're losing two businesses and partial third business that paid taxes into the city and contributed to us while we would go there and stand by for things that occurred in the other businesses that were in the city of Tampa and such. So I'm not opposed to a redevelopment, just so everyone knows what occurs is a net loss to us. Well, we'll probably still assume the same responsibilities in any of our mutual aid agreements. So I think Michael will stand up here to address some of those concerns I had regarding this.
Yes. We are, this is kind of an ongoing process, kind of going between both jurisdictions. The city has submitted preliminary comments to Tampa regarding their PD rezoning, and their comments are due June 26th, I believe. Tampa's proposal is they're having a city council meeting on July 20th to approve the PD and preliminary site plan, which we'll be attending. The plan is once they, hopefully we'll get further clarification on the city's issues once Tampa approves or either reviews the plan. at Tampa. Some of the concerns that we've expressed to Tampa that are of concern are basically doing pretty much all the services. We've recommended to Tampa, we haven't gotten confirmation yet, that they be responsible for all services to the property, including police, fire, solid waste, utilities. They're actually in the Tampa's utility service area, so Tampa or the property owner will be expected to maintain the stormwater management area. Temple Terrace will still respond as needed due to its mutual agreements. However, the city has asked that Tampa be designated as the primary responder for both fire and police and EMS. So I can't guarantee that that's, that we're still not going to get calls, but at least some of the responsibility will delegate back to Tampa. With regards to, I guess some of the other issues, it's still going to be split between Temple Terrace and Tampa, but our end is basically going to be more. Our area is essentially most of the parking area, and that's about in the stormwater retention pond, and Tampa has the buildings and more of the revenue.
Right, and I agree. I just want to make sure when we're there representing ourselves at the meeting with the city of Tampa that they know our concerns regarding the property here. And we do have other split properties. Pilot Bank has one where the bank is in the city of Tampa and the parking lot is in the back. We have a similar situation with a bank on Bush Boulevard. We also have it where it's kind of split in half. We also have a similar situation with the house on White Way where the house is in the city and some of the properties in Tampa. So it's good for all of us to work cooperatively together so that we can best achieve the goals of moving forward some redevelopment, although we're certainly going to lose something because I'm sure a parking lot pays a lot less in taxes than a business that has a restaurant or two restaurants and a liquor retail license and other items. I'm just making it publicly known that no opposition to the project, just making these things available, and that the city of Tampa recognizes that there is a mutual cooperation between the two jurisdictions. And I hope that's expressed to them at their council meeting.
We can certainly pass that on. Also, they will have to come back. Epic will need to come back to our city council to approve the final site plan for our portion. One of the other things that we're still waiting on Tampa to respond on is we've also asked them to actually do all the permitting for the entire site, because they'll have to go back to Tampa also for their construction plans. So hopefully, once we get to that point, hopefully Tampa will take care of all the permitting issues also.
Thank you. Council members, any other questions? I see a gentleman standing up there. I'm going to guess you're involved with the project and possibly have some answers to the question. Just please give your name and
He wasn't sworn.
Andrew Hupp
address,
with-
please. Well, this is just a comment. This is not the public hearing.
Right. Andrew Hupp with Epic Development. And I just want to let you know throughout this whole process, we are very sensitive to the ad valorem. We met with the property appraiser with both the City of Tampa and the City of Temple Terrace. I'm an MAI commercial appraiser for the last 25 years. And touching on the ad valorem assessment at this time, because I understand you're losing the buildings, we tried very hard to work through a split payment on that, and we got no traction. Relative to the current assessment, I believe it's around $1.2 million for the current assets that we purchased at this location. And a lot of things have changed along this corridor, as you may know, and are changing. The values are finally coming to the current standards that reflect the rents out there. We paid $4 million for these two assets, and that reflects the land value. So I'm familiar with the property appraisers of the city, Hillsborough County, and I've expressed that to them. I've expressed the fact that the assessments need to go up to reflect your contribution to what you guys do for these assets, and so we're working to that end.
Thank you. I was just making sure our citizens were aware of the implications, and again, have no objections to the project at this point, and just trying to make everybody aware. Anybody have any other comments regarding this? Okay, thank you for the presentation. I believe we're going to move on to item F. I'm going to tell you we have F, G, H,
5 more.
I, and J, which are public hearings on different public hearings and readings of ordinances and changing them all around, so it's going to be a little bit long, lengthy, and dry. They're really going to relate to a lot of issues that have all been reviewed by the Planning Commission along with our staff already. And there are issues that some of them are due to changes in statute, changes in law, changes in a lot of other requirements. And I'm sure our planner will go through this, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, first public hearing and reading of ordinance 1420 RZP 17-08 to amend the Land Development Code. I'm going to open the public hearing. Senior Planner Michael Kokoski will present.
Good evening, Michael Kukoski, Senior Planner with Community Development. This is case is RZP 1708. This is a Land Development Code Amendment for Chapter 12. I also have some updates that impact several of the amendments. RZP 1707, which was the medical marijuana, 17-08, 1709, and 17-10. All right, this
And
is,
just to clarify, these, you're going to present these three at one time, but we're going to have to vote and open public hearings on them separately. Is that correct?
actually, no, I'm presenting each case individually, but this, I'm just presenting some updates as just a casual introduction before I get into the 1708.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just an introduction to give you some updates. In both RZP 17-08, 09, and 010, we made some, there's some changes that we need to point out there at the meeting. For the Land Development Code, we had a title change in the legal ad versus the actual text that you have tonight. The sections that were affected are Section 12-241 and 12-380. These changes were not deemed significant. Also, the Code of Ordinance text, which was involved in this, we had to take out Chapter 14 local business tax updates had to be removed. We found out we were unable to make changes to those that we recommended. Also, RZP 1707 was the medical marijuana facilities. It was advertised for tonight. However, staff had to withdraw the text due to the new legislation that just passed. A moratorium extension is planned, which is planned to be discussed at June 27th meeting for a special city council meeting. Also, we need to update proposed new public hearing dates, and the city manager had indicated that he will discuss that in more detail at his agenda item. That's it for the updates. Now I can get into the actual code amendment for 1708. We added some definitions for facilities and reasonable accommodation, and we revised the definition of family. Facilities, we created development standards, application and review processes. Also create for reasonable accommodation. We created an application and review process. We addressed compliance with federal and state laws, specifically the American Disability Act and Fair Housing Act. So essentially, this is just kind of an update to existing regulations that are in effect. State regulations for such facilities, which we call residential and related healthcare facilities. This is a mix of things from like assisted living, group homes, etc. State regulations, basically Chapter 381 to 430 address the different types of facilities that have state regulations that we have to follow, and we essentially incorporated those requirements into our code. There's 5 state agencies that Florida deals with: Department of Elderly Affairs, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Children and Families, and the Agency for Healthcare Administration. Each of these has different regulations as it applies to different types of facilities. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance and proposed text amendment with the revisions as noted. And the next step will be July 18th will be a second public hearing, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the general public? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Are there any comments from council members?
I do have a question. Man, you don't make it easy. Got grids.
Well, we had a lot to put in there.
Okay, we're on housing, correct?
This is residential and related healthcare facilities, yes,
Okay,
1708.
so I understand assisted living, adult family care, I understand all those. None of these are going to make it easier for someone to open a boarding house?
No, we added the definition of boarding room and boarding house, which does not, this does not address. In fact, there's a prohibition. We put that definition in there because the statutes actually prohibits that. So we didn't add that as an allowed use.
Say that again?
We
You
didn't
did
add
not?
boarding room or
You
boarding
did
house as
not.
an allowed use, so it's currently still prohibited use.
Okay, I just wanted to make that sure that we all heard that. Okay, thank you.
And if I could just put one thing out there, one of the things that this does is that there's a requirement under the Fair Housing Act and ADA to provide for reasonable accommodations with regard to housing. And so to the extent that someone can prove that they fall within the scope of the ADA, there's a mechanism that these modifications provide for that allow for an applicant to come to the city manager. There's a process for seeking a reasonable accommodation. If they don't get the reasonable accommodation, an appeal procedure, and all of this is done in the context of satisfying federal law. Mr. Boss recently reached out to me with regard to someone who was seeking an accommodation. So this code provision would provide a mechanism to provide for reasonable accommodations in that respect. In addition to bring the land development code into compliance with Florida law with regard to providing for certain group facilities which the law requires, among other things, as Mr. Kokoski just described.
Are there any other comments from council? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, identified as RZP 1708, providing for reasonable accommodation procedures, amending Chapter 12, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, adding Article 3 titled Reasonable Accommodation Procedures, and providing for residential and related healthcare facilities, all within all zoning districts except light industrial, subject to additional standards and requirements, amending Chapter 12, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Land Development Code, Article 2, Section 12-40, titled Definitions, and the following sections of Article 7, Division 2, Section 12-225, titled R-10 Single Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-226, titled R-9 Single Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-227, titled R-7.5 Single Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-228, titled R-7 Single Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-229, titled R-MF Multifamily Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-230, titled R-MFA Alternate Multifamily Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-231, titled PD-R Plan Development Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-232, titled E-I Educational Institutional Zoning Regulations, Section 12-233, titled C-0 Commercial Office Zoning Regulations, Section 12-234, titled C-G Commercial General Zoning Regulations, Section 12-235, titled PD Plan Development Zoning Regulations, Section 12-238, titled A-U Agricultural Urban Zoning Regulations, and Section 12-259, titled Conditional Uses. Sections 12-241 through 12-258, titled Reserved, creating Section 12-241, titled Specific Standards for Permitted Uses, providing a severability clause effective date and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading.
I move to approve the ordinance on first reading.
Moved by Councilmember Donahue, second by Councilmember Gorlich. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Moving on to item G. This is the first public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1421 RZP 1709 to amend the Land Development Code. Now open the public hearing. Senior Planner Michael Koskowski will present.
Good evening, Michael Kokoski, Senior Planner with Community Development. This is RZP 17-09, the Land Development Code, specifically Chapter 12, regarding the development processes. Before I get into the details, I have some revisions that were made that I need to point out. The revisions stated prior to RZP 17-08 also apply here. The next item, there was missing text that was heard by the Planning Commission. Section 12-231 related to PDR zoning regulations. Also Section 12-377 general site development plans. And the next item is legal ad requirements. This was added after the Planning Commission had heard the case on June 12th. However, the changes were not significant. We made some revisions to Section 12-193, the rezoning section. For map amendments, we changed the number of days of public notice from in the newspaper from 10 days to 7 days for the first public hearing. Section 12-379, final site plans. For the legal ad notice for conditional use and plan development zoning cases, the number of advertising days was changed from 10 days to 7 days for the first public hearing, 5 days for the second public hearing. That's consistent with state statutes. For proposed changes, I've listed the major updates. We've updated the authorities and powers for City Council, Board of Adjustment, and Development Review Committee. Specifically for City Council, we removed the approval of sign variances and buffer variances, and we moved that to the Board of Adjustment. For the Development Review Committee, we added an administrative review process for final site plans and waivers, which currently doesn't exist. Currently, all waivers have to be approved by City Council. We also added the redevelopment director to the DRC committee. Next item, we merged variances granted basically as a result of the change in the City Council and Board of Adjustment. We merged section 12-158 and 12-159, which addresses the variance requirements. Section 12-188, we made a minor change to the official zoning map. Section 12-193, we added rezoning application and procedures was revised. Section 12-194, we made added a reference regarding comprehensive plan amendments that refers to the following the Planning Commission procedures manual. We eliminated the special approval of use and changed it to conditional use, which addresses the zoning sections from 12-225 to 12-235, which addresses the individual zoning districts. Section 12-235, we changed the PD rezoning. We've added the ability to add a conceptual plan that does not require all of the details that would normally be associated with a final site plan. The intent there is to make it easier for a developer to submit an application for rezoning. However, they would have to come back at a separate later date to get the final site plan approved. And this, we've addressed changes, any kind of changes that would occur and created processes to address changes that might occur between the PD and the concept and the actual final site plan. Section 12-241 is the permitted use standards section, and 12-259 is the conditional use standards section. What we did is, rather than have those requirements in each individual zoning district, we created a separate section where it would list all the standards for all the zoning districts in one place. Let's see. The plating and right-of-way easement vacation revisions were relatively minor, which affect section 12-330, 12-351, 12-354, and 12-357. We also revised the site plans section that addresses the application and review process. We significantly updated these to address general site plans and final site plans. We actually separated the two because our current code kind of commingles the two, so we completely separated the two general site plan and final site plan requirements. We also made correction to our revisions to the section 12-380, which is deviations from approved plans, and that was based on our proposed changes. Staff recommends approval of ordinance RZP 1709 and the text as revised, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. At this time, I will entertain any comments or questions from the general public regarding the presentation. Seeing no comments or questions from the public, the public hearing is closed. I'll ask for council member comments. Councilmember Donahue.
On fences and buffers, why has that been removed from city council approval and given to, let's see, where is that one?
Board of Adjustments.
Yeah.
We thought
Yeah.
it would make sense to have the Board of Adjustment look at all variances rather than council, but if council doesn't want to change that, we can.
Well, when the average citizen wants to talk to somebody about an issue, when it has to do with fences and any other type of, they come here. So we're going to get that person here, and then I don't want to have to turn them away and say, sorry, I can't help you, you have to go talk to the Board of Adjustment. So I just wondered why we removed that. I mean, it's not like somebody comes here all the time, but they do feel like they're heard when they're coming here. So, I mean, is there a reason to take that one out? Is it a concern?
I don't know that there's any particular reason, other than the same reason we took out the signs. We thought the Board of Adjustment should hear all variances. We thought that would be the proper and more appropriate place to take them than to City Council. It's kind of odd for City Council to hear a waiver on a sign or a fence. I mean, it's part of land development.
I agree with the sign. I guess my issue
This
is
would be-
when someone comes here, they're not saying, hey, I want to put up a white picket fence.
Yeah, well-
They're saying, hey, he put up a brick wall and I can't see and whatever, you know,
Well,
so.
Well,
yeah,
they-
the fence is actually addressed by the Board of Adjustment. I haven't found anyone that's ever applied for a variance from City Council for buffering. Usually,
You have
by itself. Now, this change still allows City Council, like if you're reviewing a site plan and someone needs to get a waiver, instead of it would be considered a waiver instead of a variance. So City Council would still have the authority at rezonings or PD rezonings or final site plans to grant waivers instead of making someone go to the Board of Adjustment for a variance for signs or landscaping. So this would be only if someone wants to come in and ask just specifically for, most of the time it would be after the fact.
Okay. All right, and same thing on the right-of-way? I mean, I think we have a longstanding lawsuit about right-of-way. Is that something you want to turn over to the Board of Adjustments?
No, the changes that we made to the
Vacating.
right-of-way essentially basically changed it from the community development director to the city engineer. And we just made some minor revisions to that process. We didn't really change it. We really didn't have enough time to really look at changes, detailed changes for that section. So that's something we probably need to look back at in the future.
Yeah, but we're talking about vacating rights-of-way, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's still held by the city engineer does that process. We're not, you can't get a variance from that. That's,
The city engineer will do the process, but it still comes to council to vacate the property.
Okay,
right, yeah, we're not changing that. That'll still come to city council.
okay. The way it read, it indicated that it was changing. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Are there any other comments from council? Seeing none, I will ask the city clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
Application RZP 1709, I'm sorry. An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, identified as RZP 17-09, providing for changes to clarify, provide consistency, and streamline the development processes by amending Chapter 12, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Land Development Code, Article 1, Section 12-8, titled Rules Regarding Implementation of New Standards, and Section 12-10, titled Waivers, amending the following sections of Article 3, Section 12-71, titled City Council, Section 12-72, titled Board of Adjustment, and Section 12-74, titled Development Review Committee, amending the following sections, Article 6, Section 12-158, titled Zoning Standards, deleting in its entirety Section 12-159, titled Signs and Buffers, and amending Sections 12-160 through 12-186, titled Reserved, amending the following sections of Article 7, Division 2, Section 12-188, titled Zoning Map, Section 12-193, titled Rezoning, and creating Section 12-194, titled Comprehensive Plan Amendment, amending Section 12-194 through 12-224, titled Reserved, amending Section 12-225, titled R-10, Single-Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-226, titled R-9, Single-Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-227, titled R-7.5, Single-Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-228, titled R-7, Single-Family Residential Zoning Regulations, Section 12-231, titled PDR, Plan Development Residential Zoning Regulations, and Section 12-235, titled PD Plan Development Zoning Regulations, creating new Section 12-241, titled Specific Uses and Standards for Permitted Uses, and amending Sections 12-241 through 12-258, titled Reserved, amending Section 7, Division 3, Section 12-259, titled Conditional Uses, amending the following sections of Article 8, titled Platting, Site Plans, Development Permits, and Other Approvals, amending Division 1, Section 12-330, titled Vacating, Discontinuing, Abandoning, or Closing Streets, Alleys, Roads, Rights-of-Way, and Easements, amending the following sections in Division 2, titled Platting, Section 12-351, titled Platting Required, Section 12-352, titled Optional, Pre-Submission Conference, Section 12-354, titled Preliminary Plat Review, and Section 12-357, titled Final Plat Review, amending Division 3, titled Site Plans, Section 12-377, titled General Site Development Plans, deleting in its entirety Section 12-378, titled Preliminary Site Plans, amending Section 12-379, titled Final Site Plans, amending Section 12-380, titled Deviation from Site Plans, providing a severability clause, effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion has been approved. The ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th. On to item H. This is the first public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1422 RZP 17-10 to amend Chapter 4 Alcoholic Beverages of the Code of Ordinances. Public hearing is open. Senior Planner Michael Kukowski will present.
Good evening, Michael Kukowski, Senior Planner, Community Development. This is RZP 1710. This is a code of ordinance change to Chapter 4, which deals with the alcohol beverages. This one's just a minor change, 2 minor changes. Section 4.6, the zoning district's location of sale of alcohol beverages and distances requirements. This affects only PD zoning district. There are two changes. We are proposing to modify the text to not require city council approval in PD zoning if Chapter 4 requirements are met. The second is a conditional use application will be required if the Chapter 4 separation distance is not met or if other variants or other waivers are required, and this would have to go to city council for approval. Staff recommends approval of the requested amendment, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the general public? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, ask for council members for any comments. Are there any comments from council? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and read the ordinance, the title of ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, identified as RZP 17-10, providing for minor changes to clarify, correct, and update information by amending Chapter 4, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Alcoholic Beverages, Section 4-6, titled Zoning Districts and Locations Where Sale of Alcoholic Beverages Permitted, Distance Requirements, providing for severability clause, effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion is carried. The motion has been carried, will appear for second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Moving to item I, this is the first public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1423, RZP 17-10, to amend Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances. Public hearing is open. I'd like to turn... I'm going to turn it over to Senior Planner Michael Kukowski, and he will present, and we will get the PowerPoint presentation up and running.
With the right slideshow. Michael Kukowski with Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. This is for RZ10 17-10. This is another Code of Ordinance change, Chapter 8, Building and Fire Prevention. Proposed text is just a minor grammatic revision to Section 8-166, parentheses 4, D, period, minimum standards, which affect parking and walkways. The words from the site, S-I-T-E, to site, S-I-G-H-T, or visibility triangle needs to be changed, and that's the only correction. Staff recommends approval of this change, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments and questions from the general public? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for council member comments. Are there any comments from council?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Seeing no, I'm ready to have the city clerk read the title of ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, identified as RZP 17-10, providing for minor changes to clarify, correct, and update information by amending Chapter 8, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Building and Fire Prevention, Section 8-166, titled Minimum Standards, providing a severability clause, effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ordinance has been approved and will appear for second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th at 2017. We have our last public hearing, item J. This is the first public hearing and first reading of ordinance 1424 RZP 17-10 to amend Chapter 12 of the Land Development Code. I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to our senior planner.
Good evening, Michael Kukowski, Senior Planner of Community Development. This is RZP 1710. This is the Land Development Code amendment for Chapter 12. This includes various updates. We'll need to go over some revisions. Actually, well, the first thing is the revisions I stated previously for RZP 17-08 apply in this case also. Staff modified the table of contents to reflect the changes. Section 12-40, we added some definition for accessory building and use, which was modified. We added tattoo parlors definition since we were adding that use. We created a new section for tattoo parlors as an allowed use, which affected various sections. Section 12-235 of the commercial general zoning, we identified this as a conditional use. Section 12-237 light industrial, we identified it as a permitted use. Section 12-241 and Section 12-259 as following what was, we added the permitted and conditional use standards in one section of the code for the tattoo parlors. Section 12-861, we made changes to the fences, walls, and hedges section. It applies to all properties, not just residential, as proposed. Updates and clarifies existing standards. We finished side is allowed to be faced inward except when it's by the street or right away. Section 12-921 is off-street parking and driveway standards. This applies to all properties, not just residential properties as it currently stands now. We added driveway standards due to some code enforcement issues and wanted to clarify some of the requirements. Section 12-923 is the use of residential zone property for parking, access, and drainage facilities. This amendment could have potentially been used for the RZP 1701, but they still needed additional, they still had additional issues. What we did here is we added R9 and R7 to that where it would be allowed so that all single-family residential zoning districts and the RMF zoning districts that are adjacent to commercial uses can be used for parking, access, or drainage facilities for those properties that are immediately adjacent to the commercial areas. Section 12-957 is off-street parking. Specifically, we modified the number of parking space requirements. I needed to, fortunately, we forgot to add, we had hotels in the existing code and we accidentally left it out, so we need to add hotel and motel standard back in. Section 12-1043 is for plant materials and design. This is a change of the reference from the year from 1963 to 2015. This basically refers to the landscaping manual that that's used by the state of Florida. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance and the text as revised, and staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. I will ask for any comments or questions from the general public. Are there any comments or questions from the general public? Seeing none, we'll move to close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a council member for comments. Are there any comments from Councilmember Gorlich?
I'm just curious as to tattoo parlors. What now, after all these years, suddenly, why that?
Again, this is one of those other issues that our city attorney had kind of asked us to look at to add to
Mr. Connolly asked you to add tattoo parlors to the ordinance?
Well, we also had some, we also had some,
Yes.
we also had some
Guilty,
interest.
guilty as charged.
We have
Looking for a
had,
discount or something? I don't.
we have had,
We also had some, we had part of what generated too is we actually had, we had an inquiry about trying to do one, and we told them that, you know, it wasn't permitted.
So it,
It's also basically because.
prior to the
looking at legal
revision to this
issues.
ordinance, it was a specifically non-permitted use?
Correct,
well, it was non-permitted because it wasn't listed.
correct.
Okay.
And there's,
The problem we've had with it, I'm sorry,
there's case law that indicates that you can't prohibit tattoo parlors.
Okay.
So making the change is bringing our code into compliance with prevailing law.
Okay.
we've had some requests in the past.
Mhm.
When I was a director, and we've been successful trying to discourage them,
Mhm.
but we're getting to the point where we can no longer do that. We're gonna end up with a problem, so that's why it's been added.
So it's been added to conform with federal or state law?
Well, there's at least one, if not multiple decisions where codes that bar them were found to be violative of the Constitution, so.
Okay. Right.
We have to have it.
Okay. Just curious why now? Why that? Why now?
It's
time.
Yeah, there are certain things that we've been discussing internally for a while that needed to be taken care
Okay.
of, and so that's one of them.
Okay.
This is one of the
Didn't know we were-
many changes.
didn't
that
know we were
need to make to our
discriminating.
code.
Any other comments from you,
No.
Councilmember? Councilmember Donahue?
Can we tell them they have to build a 6-story building? Just kidding, just kidding. I had to wake everybody up back then. Okay, here are my questions.
Okay.
Let's talk more about this off-street parking.
Okay.
You know, you're rather vague here as to what this is. I noticed, I have been told multiple times that there are trucks, large trucks, parked in our downtown redevelopment area that stay there. And some of them are being repaired there. So tell me that that is not allowed, and that we're going to ask those folks to move from there. And if it is allowed, I need to tell a few very unhappy residents that they have to deal with having that parked in their backyard. The other question is, so will you please tell me, off-street parking, it says trucks and no, I wrote trucks and redevelopment. It says driveway standards, so would you explain, go further, please, into what both of those issues are?
Okay, well, one, the update that we did to the number of parking spaces does not have an impact on the, if someone's repairing a truck on the property. I'd have to look at the code, because I'm sure we have that somewhere in the
This
code,
is,
but I don't
yeah,
know.
that
the
is, that's
specific
not really an
instance.
issue dealing with this text amendment. That is an issue that Mr. Damian and Chief Albano and myself have had conversations about.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about. We've asked Mr. Damian to address this and track down the owners and discourage them from parking there.
Okay, but
We have noticed it.
But if you could elaborate on what the change is for off-street parking? It says that it doesn't affect residential, but, so what is the change?
I'll get it on the screen. I'll try to show it on screen. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but a lot of these, what we did is, I kind of tried to do a summary here. Essentially, bicycles, right now we have a requirement that bicycle racks be provided, but we have no standard as to how many. So staff had administratively been using 10% of the total parking, or 10% of the number of residential units, so we're formalizing that in the code. Most of these, we've made some minor changes to. Single family is about the same as it is now, except for townhomes currently only require 1 parking space, so the new standard would require at least 2 parking spaces for a townhome. multifamily dwellings. We actually, and this is based on some of the apartment complexes that the city recently had built over the last 3 years. We actually reduced the standard a little bit because we thought that was more reasonable. Hotels, industrial uses, office uses, for business and professional and government, there was no change. Religious institutions, no change. Restaurants, no change. Offices and clinics, we currently have 4 spaces per doctor. We just added a 4 spaces per doctor or 1 per 300 square feet, whichever is greater. Because a lot of times, there's only 1 doctor, but they might have a large office with. So we thought they would kind of balance it out. All the residential and related healthcare facilities, we've added all those facilities. We looked at, the county, Tampa, and we looked at the recent experience we had with the assisted living facilities. So we kind of adopted those standards because we currently don't have any standards for those uses. Retail, we just modified that slightly. Schools and colleges, we tried to consolidate it into one standard. Those are really the main changes that we made. And there's still, if there's not a use that's listed, then we try to match it to whatever is closest to that use.
Okay. And the driveway standards?
And the, what standard?
Driveway.
You listed driveway standards.
What we did is, let me get to the driveways. Some of the things that we specifically entered is we required a uniform border. We added a uniform border be required. Recycled and crushed asphalt and other loose material used shall be packed in and rolled in order to create a uniform appearance. We added we essentially took our building permit application requirements that basically explain the compaction, how it has to be designed. We incorporated that into the code rather than just having it as our building permit includes the drawing that we added from our building permit. So it's not new, it's just that we thought it would be better to put it in our code rather than have it in just our building permit application.
So we are going to continue to allow crushed asphalt in a residential driveway?
Yes, as long as it has a uniform border.
Have you seen one of those?
Right now, well, the issue we had with one didn't have a border. And that's why we also added uniform, because we didn't want someone to have different materials as the border.
So if someone is using that material, they have to get a permit from now on? Because if I recall, the issue was that the gentleman called and said, I want to put down a driveway with crushed asphalt, and somebody looked at it and said, oh, that's acceptable.
Yes.
So then he
If it's,
basically covered up his entire yard with asphalt.
our building director has told us that if it's, for a driveway, if it's going to exceed 100 square feet, then they need a permit. If it's under 100 square feet, they wouldn't need a permit.
Okay, so any driveway?
Correct. Or any extension
Okay.
of the driveway.
So has that already been in place, or that's new?
No, that's been the policy. That's a policy that the building department implements, that if it's under 100 square feet, it doesn't require a permit.
I have to say, the driveway in question has been repaired, and it's beautiful, but it takes up probably 75% of the front yard. So but the asphalt was already down, so there was nothing we could do about it, I suppose, at that point. So I think when I first brought this up, I was trying to get rid of the crushed asphalt, and so it's still here. I mean, is that, trust me, when it's on your street, you think twice about allowing it.
Well, I mean, I mean, we didn't change that, well, it couldn't be allowed. The only thing, we added that there had to be a uniform border. I mean, we already said that, the current code already says there has to be a border, we just added uniform. And then we also added that it has to be rolled, it has to be packed and rolled so that to stabilize it more.
Okay, do you know what the border was before? It was concrete blocks. That might be uniform. They were all ugly, okay? It was 100%. It was uniform, but it was not acceptable in a residential neighborhood. So I don't think this is tough enough. Sorry.
Well, I mean, this is what we put together, so
I
if council
know.
wants to eliminate it.
I hear you. Well, I think you
can
need to
take
beef it up
out.
a little bit. You have to figure out what, to be uniform means all, but all doesn't mean attractive. So is there any way to change that?
Well, he also said
I
that
don't know
if
how
it's
we-
over
I don't know
100
how
square
we
feet,
can change
you
it to-
permit
Well, we
the
don't.
permit process, they could direct the individual to something that is more attractive to the neighborhood. I mean,
It's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to,
Any driveway is going to be over 100 square feet, so every driveway needs a permit.
That's correct.
City
As
manager,
far
you
as-
can-
You have discretion to give a permit or not give a permit, so I think that takes care of it.
City manager,
well,
if
we
you'd like to
formalize
address
that
this.
by requiring it.
Yeah, we believe that crushed asphalt is a suitable material to put on a driveway. I know that, as a matter of fact. My kids in Melbourne have it, and it's just as sturdy and just as compacted as concrete. So, although it has a different appearance, there are several things that we allow people to use, including shell, crushed shell. We don't see that crushed asphalt's any different, so that's why we kept it in there. We tried to put some restrictions on it. A uniform border was certainly one of those things that we thought that the house on Linda didn't address. So, I mean, trying to put some uniformity to the thing.
I appreciate that you
We-
were. I
We
appreciate
certainly
it.
will not encourage people from here out to use concrete block.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that is appropriate.
No,
And
it's-
that's certainly something that should be taken into consideration when we do plan review.
Thank you.
So,
Are there any comments from council? Seeing none, I would ask the city clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, identified as RZP 1710, providing for minor changes to clarify, correct, and update information by amending Chapter 12, City of Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Land Development Code, Article 2, Section 12-40, titled Definitions, amending Article 7, Division 2, Section 12-234, titled Commercial General Zoning Regulations, and Section 12-237, titled Light Industrial Zoning Regulations, creating Section 12-241, titled Specific Uses and Standards for Permitted Uses, and amending Sections 12-241 through 12-258, titled Reserved, amending Division 3, Section 12-259, titled Conditional Uses, amending Article 9, Division 11, Section 12-861, titled Fences, Walls, and Hedges, amending Division 13, Section 12-921, titled Off-Street Parking and Driveway Requirements, and Section 12-923, titled Use of Residentially Zoned Property for Parking, Access, or Drainage Facilities, amending Division 14, Section 12-957, titled Design and Construction Standards for Parking Lots, amending Division 17, Section 12-1043, titled Plant Material and Design, providing a severability clause effective date and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. If the ordinance is acceptable, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Gorlich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Donahue. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion has been approved. The ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. We are done with the public hearing portion of the program. I thank the city clerk and the senior planner for having to speak a lot more than I did during the last hour. In council business, the first item of business, item A, is Florida League of Cities voting delegate. The city manager will brief us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Boss. Florida League of Cities is fixing to hold its 91st annual conference in Orlando, August 17th and 19th. The league has sent a letter requesting that the city designate a voting delegate for all business items that come before the membership so that we can have a voice at the table. It's recommended that city council designate one of its members to serve as the city's voting delegate in the upcoming annual conference, and if a voting delegate is selected, staff will advise Florida League of Cities prior to the August conference.
Thank you. I guess the meeting is August 17th through the 19th. I'm not sure which one of us is assigned to go to the League of City meetings right now. I can't remember.
It's me.
Off the top of my head. That's what I thought. Is there anyone who's interested in attending the meeting?
I'm unable to attend. I'll be out of town. I have a meeting. I've already let them know that I cannot attend, so I'm sorry, somebody else.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I actually have a meeting or not, because they seem to have doubled or more over the last month or so. And a lot of times, I'm only getting up to date now recently with some of the people who are telling me I need to be places every other day. So I'm not sure that I'm fully aware of what my commitments are for August. I don't think there are any there, but if none of the other members would like to go,
I'm going to be in Kentucky, so.
we're two down. Mr. Ross, did you say yes? No. Mr. Chalora?
Mr. Ross isn't here, maybe we can nominate him.
That's what happens.
That's usually what happens when you miss a meeting. I thought I heard him from Alaska say that he wanted to attend, but
Can Mr. Boss, can a staff member fill that role if
They
somebody
can't
from
vote.
staff? They
I don't
can't
think
vote?
they can vote.
I think you would
You
have to be
an
elected member to
official.
go ahead and vote on behalf of the city.
Right.
I haven't been to the meetings before.
Can't give them power of attorney for that meeting?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, since Mr. Ross is not here and I'm fulfilling the functions of the city, of the mayor, if we obviously need to have someone at the meeting. I'm not sure what the full amount of days occur, the 17th and 19th. I don't think I have anything, but if necessary, if someone wants to make the motion, I will attend on behalf of the city for the annual conference in Orlando.
Allow me. I move that we elect or nominate or approve Bob Boss as our voting member at the upcoming League of Cities meeting, August, was it 18th and 19th?
17th through the 19th.
17th through the
Yeah.
19th.
I second that motion.
That's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And I guess I'll get the information
Okay.
from the clerk's office as to what it is, where it's going, and what the whole
May I?
thing is going to be. And Councilmember Donahue,
Yeah,
please.
I'd like to add, since we're talking about Florida League of Cities, I am your delegate on the legislative policy and for land use and economic development. And we met last week, and I want you to know that the process is that they present us with a long list of items that are possibly going to come before the legislators and would need us to react. And so, after much discussion, it was decided that the two issues, we were told we were allowed to only select two, but we selected annexation, which appears to be on the horizon, and private property rights issues. But we also elected, community redevelopment agencies, CRAs, those are under fire. But we also elected that every committee, there are 4, that they all agreed that preemption of municipal home rule powers was so egregious this year during the session that we all needed to address that. So That meeting will be held at the same time as you will be attending, but I've already told them that I cannot be there, and I will be in attendance in December when the final workshop is held. But they also asked me to announce that the Florida League of Cities is hosting a webinar on cities on June 20th, which is today, so you missed it, on how to comply with new airport zoning regulations. And I do have a website for you to go to so that you can see. And, you know, my first reaction was, well, we don't have, but we do. We're within the mileage restrictions for building height and all those other good things. So I'll pass that on to you since you get to do that sort of thing. But I wanted to make sure that I let you know that I am serving on that committee on your behalf. And it's amazing. It's a lot to be learned, really is. So thank you.
Okay, next item of council business is item B, the city clerk evaluations. I'm going to pass down the compilation of all the different evaluations that we received from all the members of council, including past Mayor Kim Linebaugh. Obviously, I will say, just to start off, not necessarily only for the city clerk, but for our city attorney and our city manager also, most of the time you have one person evaluating 5 or 6 or 7 employees and giving an evaluation. Rarely do you have 6 people evaluating 1 employee. So kind of when you do an evaluation and you work for someone, you know what to expect from everybody when you do your evaluation. So this is kind of backwards from the way kind of normal businesses work, but everyone did respond to me, thank you, and those who responded to Mayor Linebaugh passed it on to me. So I that you get all the evaluations in a timely fashion. And there's a wide range of comments, and I didn't make copies of all the different ones for everybody. I'm going to turn them over to the clerk. I guess if everyone needs them, she can get copies of all the total evaluations if someone is interested in them. For total, it was on a 1 to 5 rating basis. The scores range from a 3 from some of the people participating to a 5 for the total average score out on the evaluation, and the total average amongst everybody was a 4.06 out of 5. So this is just for everyone's consideration. I'm sure we'll be discussing everything when we come to budget time and looking at the city clerk and all the other positions in our city. So everyone has them, knows what has been put forth. I'll give the actual copies for the clerk to put into our record. They're there, and also she can see and read the comments and be aware of what went on. I know Councilmember Ross, who isn't here, talked about us adding the possibility of creating a kind of semi-subcategory or new standard of setting up in advance goals and expectations for the upcoming year. So I'm sure we will add that to the city clerk evaluation. Is there any other council business?
Yes.
Councilmember Donahue.
I want to address Mr. Bunton. I know you wanted an answer tonight, so I guess that would be Police Chief and Mr. City Manager. Would you like to address those 2 concerns that he expressed at 510 Hibiscus?
Ms. Donahue and Mr. Butane, we have gathered enough evidence to move forward on a notice of code violation that will be delivered to the occupant or the owner of 510 in regards to the number of people living there. That will be going to the next code hearing. I think it's on the 12th to the 14th. I'm not quite sure. It's the 12th to the 14th, the next code hearing. But we're
July.
moving forward with that. 12th. Thank you. So we're going to be moving forward with that.
How about the dog issue? Is the county,
If we can
sorry.
just kind of keep it to comments, I think Mr. And I'm going to go with, I thought you said Mr. Buton, correct? Buton. Okay, so this way I get it right, because I'm sure I'll see you again. I know it took a while for Mr. Congilio's name to kind of
Yeah.
find its way into the permanent record. Obviously, animal control, who we do pay for our taxes to the city of Temple Terrace, pay Hillsborough County. We don't have our own separate animal enforcement officer. We did have an officer here at one time that did a lot of that stuff because she was very involved in it, who has since retired, and I'll just have Mr. Stevenson respond to that issue.
We've been
any
working,
further.
yeah, we've been working with animal control in the county, and she's, I mean, I've personally met with her as well, so we're addressing that. She's helping us with whatever they can, so.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one other comment. I just cannot, I realize that people will come up and express their own personal opinion, but we have had every school principal come and address this council and tell us their test scores, their discipline levels, and all of these successes, and to have somebody state and have it for the record that our schools are not what, I'm not even going to use the same adjective that he used. My grandchildren are in our public schools here in Temple Terrace. They attend Lewis Elementary. I have a daughter who teaches at Lewis Elementary, so I will always defend our schools and let you know that we have good schools, and obviously, there is nothing perfect, but I just want for the record to indicate that I disagree with the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other council business? Just real quickly, and since we're on the topic of what was going on during public discussion, I believe Ms. Lieber brought up something regarding how, about the city staff being aware of the late payment or not aware of the late payment from the country club to us, or from the Integra Group and to us. I'm not sure if you're prepared to answer that at this time.
Well,
But I would appreciate
I don't
comments
know
from
that I've got
staff.
I don't know that I've got a satisfactory answer for you, other than I guess that's on me. I should have known what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. We've had a new finance director come in. She's done some wonderful things, and that's one of those things that I should have been keeping better track of. That problem's on me. I apologize.
Okay, hopefully we'll be able to get some more information from the club in the future regarding issues there. We're going to move on.
I just,
Okay, Ms. Pogorelic.
the fact that he missed the payment, maybe on him, but nothing would have changed the fact that the integrity left or was leaving, and they didn't tell anybody, and they left us and 7 others. Nothing's going to change that fact. Nothing's going to change the fact that they essentially ran out the door and emptied the bank account without anybody's permission. So the end result would have been the same. If we had known 24 hours earlier that they didn't pay us, by the time we got around to getting to them and getting them to be paid, we still wouldn't have been paid. So, yeah, we should have known they hadn't paid us, but it would not have changed the fact that we were going to get paid. So,
Ms. Donahue.
Did they pay in January?
Yes, ma'am, they did. That payment was made.
And Integrity Golf had quarterly payments to make to us. They didn't pay on a monthly basis. They reimbursed the city quarterly, and it was about $15,000 a month. So a January payment would have been about $45,000 approximately. Or so. I'm sure you don't have it in front of you, but if I remember from.
Yeah, we can give you a
previous
full
discussions.
accounting of
Okay.
that as
Yeah, and
maybe, I don't think it was, I don't think it amounted to $45,000, it's in the range of 30.
And again, I don't have the exact figure.
30, yeah, it was in the range of 30-something.
Okay.
There was some incidental payments of $4,400 that they made for garbage and water, sewer, that kind of deal, so.
and I think the board member that was here in front of us, I think he actually stated on the dais or at the podium that was the only payment that they missed. It was the last payment before they left town. So,
Okay, well, I did ask earlier for a quarterly report, so I'm sure that'll all be revealed at
Yeah,
that point.
We can do an accounting back to when we signed the agreement with Integrity and provide you with that. That's easy enough to do.
Well, but my request was for all finances, a quarterly report on all, the state of the union, basically,
Well,
up to.
that may be more difficult than just integrity, but we'll.
No, that was my question. And
Well, if that's what you're requesting,
Yeah.
we'll do our best to get that to you.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Is there any other council business? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to new business. Item A under new business is consideration, discussion, and direction on proposed charter amendment. And I will turn it over to the city manager to explain what we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Boss. Included in your package is a continuation of discussion on amending the charter. At May 16th, we discussed, a discussion ensued regarding conducting a review of the city charter to ensure that the charter provisions are not outdated or unworkable under the current conditions. Council members determined that the thorough review of the charter was in order, and since the last charter review was conducted in '04, and it was placed on the 2006 election ballot, so it's been some time since it's been done. The subsequent adopted 2006 charter amendment included several housekeeping items, but it also revised sections of the charter addressing runoff elections, interim vacancies, and candidates running for office. What we have done is taken those suggestions from council. We had put them into a red line document that is attached to the agenda. The primary change is the elimination of the mayor's position and the selection or appointment of a mayor. It was requested that we come up with wording on two different versions. That is in the red line version that is attached to your agenda for your selection on which way to go with that. In response to the council's request to conduct a current review, we're proposing the following revisions for council's consideration. In the primary sections with the proposed amendments are 2.02 and section 3.01. The balance of the changes that you will see in the red line are really incidental changes to those two main changes. It's requested that council provide some direction to staff on how they would like us to proceed with these amendments. And certainly, the biggest question is a decision needs to be made on concerning whether a committee is going to be needed, and council is going to suggest whether or not we form a committee to review these proposed changes. With that, we'll kind of look for some direction from council.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, I'll open up for council discussion. Does anybody like to discuss the charter
do.
amendment proposal that's put before us?
Okay.
Councilmember Donahue.
I looked at the minutes of the goal-setting session, and two of us said, yeah, we think that the charter should be reviewed. One person said very specifically that he had a problem with the fact that the mayor didn't vote, and so we had a little bit of conversation about that, but and I realize the minutes are not verbatim, but there was no clear indication that we had a specific item we wanted to look at. So I would like for us to, rather than decide tonight to change the charter, I have a question as well, but rather than decide to change the charter on this one specific item, that we actually, since the election shouldn't be until November of 2018, that we have plenty of time to set up and commission a charter review committee. Because if you said that we haven't looked at this since 2004, it's time to look at it. And we're not going to have this on our special election, which is in October. But if we have it at the special election, those are generally poor turnout. So if we really want to do something this major, we should do this at the November election, 2018 election, where we will have a lot more people voting, and it gives us time to actually educate the public on any changes that we propose. So I would like to make a motion. I'd like to move to commission a charter review committee for possible changes to the city's charter in the 2018 election.
There is a motion by Councilmember Donahue to form sorry, could you just say it again?
A charter review committee.
A charter review committee. Is there a second? I will second it for discussion. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I just want to say,
Councilmember Gorlick.
I just want to say that, Ms. Donahue, you brought this up 2 meetings ago, and it was determined that we were moving forward. You brought it up, I think, at a special meeting. It was determined that we were moving forward. You brought it up at the last meeting, and we were determined that we were moving forward. I'm sorry you're not getting the answer you want, but we've already decided 3 times that this is what we were going to do. So, obviously, I'm not going to be in favor of your motion, but I just don't understand that, as council members, we are a group, and we are to live in support by the majority of council. And I just don't understand the whole theory of, I keep asking the question until I get a different answer. So it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem as part of our collegial mannerisms, and I'm insulted that you would even bring it up again, because, like I said, we've discussed this 3 times already. And 3 times we gave direction to the city manager to move forward. Now, I do have some questions on the wording, but I don't have any questions on the idea that we're moving forward with this. And it seems to me that you're going to keep bringing this up until you get a different answer. And we've answered it 3 times.
May I?
Sure.
Councilmember Donahue.
Well, we can still include the information that the city manager has brought forward to us. But obviously, you don't have agreement. There were 2 of us who voted against it.
You had the majority agreement. 3 people
Agreed.
voted in favor of it.
Excuse me.
That's what we
I have
always
the
do.
floor. Excuse me.
Councilmember Donahue finish, and then you can come back to you for discussion, and we'll get further input from other council members regarding the issue.
Thank you. So the point is, we're not going to vote on this until 2018. So why would we not take a look, as long as we're going to have an election on this charter, why would we not look at the charter? And, I mean, at the time, when we had this discussion, even though we didn't know that we were also going to be having an election for mayor. All right, now, that was not revealed to us until after we had that first discussion. And then we've had it since, and I still think that it doesn't make much sense to vote now on one thing to put in November of 2018, when we have plenty of time to pull together a commission and let them look at it. If I understand the way it works, we each get to appoint a person to sit on this commission. They look at the charter, they decide that maybe there are some things that are archaic. What is the rush to approve this for something that isn't going to be voted on until 2018, November of 2018? So you're right, I will keep asking until, maybe I just keep asking until I get the answer I want, and I'm not going to get it tonight. We could have a tie tonight, and that we wouldn't be able to vote on anything. We have to postpone it. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I say this on multiple occasions. What is the rush when you can easily put this forward to a commission and let them look at it, let them vet it, and then let us move forward? So thank you very much for letting me have my speech.
Councilmember Gorlich, please.
Let me remind you of what happened at those other 3 meetings. The majority of council voted that putting together a committee to review the charter would unduly put too much on the voters, because there may be multiple changes. If we put together a committee, this is what was decided by the majority of council, that there may be so many changes that it would overwhelm the average voter if we put all that on a referendum. You were there. That was the discussion. And that was what the majority of council voted on, that's what would happen. What the majority of council decided to do was to make minor changes on most of it, to clean up language and to address 2 issues. that would go into the referendum. And the majority of council voted in favor of doing that 3 times. So by your own admission, you're just looking for a new answer. When in fact, the majority of council has voted on this 3 times, and the majority of council is why we have in front of us this red line. And I shouldn't have to do this, but let me remind you that as a member of council, you are to cooperate and support what the majority vote is. Not because it's one item you don't like, that you're going to continue to ask until you get a different answer. If that's the way we're going to conduct ourselves, we will never get anything done. I'm done, thank you.
Mrs. Chiller? Councilmember Chiller.
Mr. Conley, what are the rules and procedures of Robert's Rules of Order when you're on the descending side of a vote and you bring it back up and you try to word it differently? Aren't you prohibited from bringing a motion up to try to reconfigure it? This has already been brought up, voted on, because certainly in all my years of business, when a vote is taken, whether you like it or not, you move on. And it looks like we're trying to come back and skin the cat when we have, unless you have a substitute motion which requires your majority of the vote. That's not here right now. So, you know, we've had this discussion. We've talked about it. And in order to have something come before the council, it does not have to be a majority issue. If there is an issue of importance, any member can request that discussion be brought before this council, whether it be in a workshop. You've done it with the schools. We didn't vote on it. We just said we feel there's a need because there's mixed views on it. So that's what was done. It's not like there was some secret, you know, initiative here, and it was done publicly. But, you know, we did bring it up. The vote was 3-2 to move forward, and we did discuss that less is better on a charter, and if we feel like there is some housekeeping to the charter, then if we felt it necessary, we create a committee. The question was, how do we create a committee down the road to do something like that? But direction was clearly given, and staff has exhausted time, energy, and efforts to reword some language here. We cannot direct staff to spend an exorbitant amount of hours like you did a little while ago and say, I want a quarterly financial report. You can't do that. We'll discuss that at a later time, that if staff's going to be consuming a lot of time, that has to be through motion of council. I cannot call the city and say, by the way, I need you to go do this because I want it done. If it's something that takes short, you know, a little bit of time, that's fine, but if it's going to consume a lot of staff time, that's got to be in the form of a motion by the council. None of us have the authority and power to direct our city manager or anybody else at the city to go and take on projects that consume a great deal of time and effort. And we'll leave that up to the city manager. It's a different discussion. But normally we follow the Robert's Rules of Order, and we follow procedures on this council. There's been decisions that have been made on this council, and I've not been in favor of, but the vote's taken, we move on. I'm not going to bring it back up. So I just want to make sure that we're following those, because I don't want a free-for-all up here, because if they're doing it, then I'm going to do it, and then we will have a circus up here. So, Mr. Conley, I see you looked up, so maybe you've had a little time to look at what you're looking for.
So from time to time, there have been motions to rescind that have been brought up by members of City Council. Under the rules, a motion to rescind requires a 2/3 vote unless notice is given, in which case, if previous notice is given that a motion to rescind is going to be brought up at another City Council meeting, then the motion to rescind can be adopted with a majority vote. But then once something's rescinded, then you'd have to take a vote in order to go forward on the matter again. So at any particular meeting, you'd need a 2/3 vote. Here, where you've got you know, a quorum that is being met with 4, that would require 3 out of 4 votes to meet.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is the motion that's on the floor is not a valid motion.
Well, at this point, if there's a motion to rescind, she would have to have it seconded, and it would have to be voted in favor of by 3 separate and 3 out of 4 members present.
If the vote's 2-2, it's not a valid motion.
or it's not going to be adopted. It's not going to pass.
That's the point. I'm trying to make.
The action will not be adopted.
Okay, so by the, I'm not sure, there was a motion, a second, and the two other speakers did not speak in favor. I can't read a crystal ball, but if I look at it, I don't think there's going to be three votes supporting that motion. So do we have to take the vote to take it to that point?
Well, at this point, there hasn't been a second to any motion that I'm aware of.
Mr. Ball seconded.
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Ball seconded.
my apologies. So, then we need to back up to the extent that the motion was not to rescind a previous action, and not having the minutes in front of me to see what the previous discussion was. The city manager and I prepared the language that's before you based upon direction that was given to us at a previous city council meeting to implement language that was discussed at that meeting. So that was the direction given, and that's what was brought back before you. I'd have to take a look at the minutes to see precisely what motion was made as far as how it was going to go forward, but I do recall what Mr. Pogorelic just described as far as there being discussion at the meeting about the manner in which this would proceed forward, and being a discussion about limiting the number of items that would come before the electorate through a referendum. That I don't have the minutes in front of me to see to what extent the motion that was just made to put this in front of a commission is inconsistent with the previous action made by the city council versus simply discussion at a city council meeting.
Okay,
So
well,
that's what we'd need to see is what do the minutes say as far as the motions previously made with regard to taking this action.
Okay, well, hopefully the technology we have today, the information should hopefully be at your fingertips. So let's go ahead and look at those minutes, because I know the vote was 3-2 to go down that path. So if we need to do that, let's just deal with this now and not drag it on for another 2 weeks.
And I don't know if the city clerk has it up.
I'm trying to locate.
While we're finding that information out, which could, regardless of technology, take a minute or two, and since I haven't spoken on this issue yet, I believe the first items where these changes in here were discussed was at a goal-setting session. Then it expanded into a workshop in which no official vote could be taken at. Then there was a direction of council that was voted at for staff to come forward with potential changes to the charter based upon our discussions from the workshop, which is worded in here. And again, during the workshop, some of them I agree with, some of them I disagree with. And I'll specifically say some of the minor changes in there I concur with. Some of them are because of legal changes in the law, some of them are because of court rulings, some of them are because of things that are missing completely. And I will say during the workshop, if we pull up the minutes, and what was discussed is I believe that there's a bunch of different ways that, things can be brought forth or change, our bylaws, our concept, our charter. I don't believe the vote of 3 council members without input from either a petition by 10% of our electorate or our registered electorate or from a charter review commission should be decided by 3 members of the city, in which we change our whole major structure and form of government. I understand the arguments that were presented for it. I spoke against it at the other meetings and the other workshops. And part of my reasoning is I disagree with the fact that 3 people on council, or 4 people, depending on who voted for it, should go ahead and change our charter and our government structure significantly from what we have now to a new governmental structure, completely erasing all the things we've done. I get the arguments, I understand the arguments for and against it. I'm against it. I believe it should either come from our citizens, not just one citizen who spoke at a meeting, but from a majority of citizens. I believe we have a provision in there to be 10% of our electorate can bring something before here. And then while we're searching for stuff, because I don't believe any of these items that are in here were specifically voted on or addressed at the last council meeting, was just for staff to come back with the direction from they had been given and kind of semi-voted on at a workshop, even though we can't vote at a workshop, So it wasn't necessary to vote on these charter amendments. There was a motion to bring forth these proposals so that they could be voted on by us, but not necessarily these proposals per se. That's my recollection of how the minutes go, and hopefully we'll be able to find them and get, moving forward. That's just what I have to say regarding that. Then I have other questions later. I'll go to Councilmember Donahue and, I'm sorry, Councilmember Donahue and Councilmember Gorlich next.
I just want to verify, I am not suggesting that we take this language or this vote away, okay? I am suggesting that we, and I remember it exactly the same way that Mr. Boss remembers it. There was a discussion, and then there was no vote the first time we brought it up, and then the last time we brought it up, yes, you're right, it was voted 3-2 to send this to staff to rewrite it. There was no discussion about whether or not we have a commission formed by a voting body. It was in a discussion, it was in a workshop. So I don't believe I've broken any laws as far as parliamentary procedure goes, because I'm not suggesting that this item not be included. I'm only asking that we take this, and I trust the electorate out there. I think that, first of all, I don't think the commission is going to have 10 or 20 changes. They might have 2. They might have 1, the one that we've proposed. And if they look at it, I've been looking at the League of Cities sends out a list of items from across the state. And every week, I just pulled this one up from Broward County. Every week, there is a new city who is doing a charter review. It's a common thing to happen. We haven't done it since 2004. I'm just asking that we include this verbiage to the commission, but that we put it before a commission, let them look at it, let them decide whether it's worth doing or not, and then, we can vote on the verbiage. That's not an issue. But I just think we should let them know that we're interested in that, if there are enough people. Obviously, there are 3 out of the 5 who are interested in that change. But that's the way I remembered it. It was not a clear vote that we not go to a commission. It was a clear vote that we look at this particular item. So, I'll stand by my memory on that one.
Ms. Mooney, have you found the portion of the minutes?
So it was during a work session on May 16th, and at the end of the meeting, Councilmember Ross said that everyone made good points, and he believes council should select a couple of items to move forward with for 2018. Perhaps council could wait and revisit some of the other items at another time. Mayor Linebaugh mentioned that this is something the city attorney, city manager, and city clerk could work on and bring back to council for approval to make it part of the 2018 ballot process. Councilmember Donahue had said at that point that she would like to see different options. She wants to see defined language. And the city manager said he can prepare that for sections 201 and 202. And Councilmember Boss and Vice Mayor Boss brought up that he'd like to see something fit into section 2-02. And he's okay with the section 2-01. There was nothing voted on because it was during a work session.
All right, and this was at on May 16th, that was a workshop?
Yeah.
It was not a city council meeting.
Nope.
It was a workshop. So at a workshop, city council can discuss issues and bring those issues before city staff to take action on, but you're not taking official action of the city council at workshop meetings. So at that meeting, you had a discussion and direction given to the city attorney and city manager to do something that was in accordance with the discussion, but that's not official action of the city council at that point in time. And what I'm seeing now is I've heard a motion that was seconded that if the movement and the person who seconded it vote in favor of it, the 2 other people at the dais are going to vote against it. So we're not going to have that acted upon. So it would seem as if this would be a matter that would be better brought before city council at a city council meeting where you have enough members so that you can actually have a vote on the item.
If I may, Mr. Vice Mayor, a couple things. At the end of the day, you're gonna get your wish. The people are gonna vote on it. They're gonna decide, not us. They're gonna decide. It's gonna go to a referendum. Secondly, I agree, we can vote, and it's gonna be a moot point, because we know which way it's gonna go. But we voted at the last meeting. We had the same discussion at the last meeting, and I had the same outrage at the last meeting, and we had the same motion made at the last meeting that didn't pass, and we had another motion, I believe. Can you pull up those meetings?
They're in the minutes.
What's the resolution? What was the vote, the motion made concerning this at the last meeting?
I think it was only to give him direction. I don't think it was a motion.
Can you look?
I did look for it.
There was no motion about a commission.
Well, let's go ahead and vote then. Let's call the question.
Well, I do have a couple other questions, but since you've called the question, it's not debatable, and it's conversation, there has to be a second to the motion to call the question. And then it has to have a supermajority vote, or two-thirds majority.
Well,
So
go
that's-
ask your question. Let's just move this on.
Thank you. I would like to know further, again, there's two issues. One, obviously, we could have a tie vote here. Mayor or person acting as mayor breaks ties. I don't know if this comes into play in this situation here.
The
That'd be
vice
the
mayor.
first issue.
Yeah, the vice mayor, when the vice mayor is acting as mayor under the charter, the vice mayor votes in the same manner as other members of city council. So you would vote on this.
But only one vote. He doesn't
That-
get to vote twice to
No, he only
break the
gets
tie.
one vote.
No, he
He only
does not.
gets one.
That's what he
Yeah.
was asking.
No, there's only one
Yeah.
vote.
That would be great.
That's what he was asking.
Well, what happens in the case of a tie?
Well, it does not pass.
It's dead.
The motion does not pass.
Then I have just a second procedural question regarding what occurs, whichever way we move forward with this, whether it's through a group of citizens who go ahead and bring us back revisions to this, or whether council decides to do it, what has to happen then next? Is it an ordinance that's put on a ballot or put up to vote for city council to go ahead and put a referendum on a ballot?
Yes, ultimately, no matter what happens, whether you do it through a charter review committee that's put together, or it's something that's determined by city council, ultimately, once the language is something that's deemed to be appropriate, you would provide direction to have an ordinance prepared. The ordinance would come before city council with public hearings, and then that ordinance would have both the revised charter review language in it and proposed referendum questions in it. And that would have to be adopted before the proposed revised language would go to a vote of the electorate.
That would be, the ordinance would have to be passed before it went onto a ballot, regardless of whichever way we propose it.
Yes, sir.
And again, I think this is kind of the thing we just some more discussion before we vote. This is kind of the issue that has come forward, and with the referendum, the state has imposed and is putting out as a change to the state constitution, where it's putting something up for the citizens that, they may not really know about or have sufficient knowledge about, that's leaving cities and municipalities out of the loop. I think we're kind of doing the same thing here by putting a referendum on the ballot, that it's obviously going to require a lot of input to educate our citizens on it, on something that could just come out of our citizens. And I would ask, if it does come as an ordinance before us and is voted or approved 3-2 as pursuant to how the discussion has gone in the past, how does section 2.09 of the city charter apply regarding vetoing an ordinance?
I'm sorry, Mr. Boss.
In reference to our situation right now, with just 5 people, and the mayor has the authority to, or the person acting as mayor has the authority to not sign an ordinance into law and vetoing it and bring it back for the requirement of a 4-to-1 vote with the objections noted.
Right, so there's a mechanism in the charter that provides the mayor that would be presently acting, you would be acting as mayor with the ability to not approve an ordinance at which time would not become law. If disapproved, the mayor, in your case, acting mayor, shall return it to the city council with written objections at the next regular city council meeting. The objections shall be entered in full upon the record, and the council shall consider the mayor's objections. If, upon consideration, the city council shall pass the ordinance by affirmative vote of 4 council members, the ordinance or ordinances shall then become law. The mayor objections to the contrary notwithstanding, any ordinance which shall not be returned to the council at the next regular meeting of the city council after its passage shall become a law as if signed by the mayor.
Thank you. And as previously stated, I'm supportive of the motion by Councilmember Donahue, and I have no more questions or concerns about the process. If there is no further discussion, I will go ahead and entertain a vote on the motion by Councilmember Donahue to move this to a review committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion is stalemated, and we'll go up for, I guess, future discussion again. And any other comments?
I have one question I have to ask.
Sorry, Councilmember
Go
Gorlich's
ahead.
his hand first, then Councilmember Donahue.
I think we still have to determine on section 3.01 which language council prefers. That should be a robust discussion. I will say that the second version, hang on a second, I got lost here. First meeting, majority vote, actually one of its 5 members should serve for an annual. The first version of the language, I would be in favor of. That way, every year we're voting for a new mayor, just like other cities do. So of the two, I prefer the first version.
Any other discussion regarding that? And since we don't know where it's going to go to right now, either through us or through a review committee, I believe both should be intended to stay in there so we can take a vote on it and make the decision at that time. I again, am not in favor of any of those, so I'm opposed to them all, and don't believe that without significant outcry from our citizens, we should be looking to change our form of government in the way we're doing it. So that's my opinion on that. I think we would have to have them come up here before our 5-member board of voters and go ahead and make a decision on our 5-member board of voters as to which one should stay or which one should go. If that is decided they should stay or go to a review committee. Councilman Donahue?
Well, I agree. I don't like either at this point. But I also have gone through the minutes from last month on the last meeting, and there was no discussion. The reason you were mad at me last time was because of the city attorney. So it was a whole other different, we didn't discuss this.
Well, then it was
At
the
the
meeting
last-
before that. I
It-
know we
it may
discussed,
be. It
I know
may
we
be.
discussed it 3
I
times.
just want to make sure, I've gone through the minutes now. So I'm prepared to vote no on either one. So I don't need to say anything else.
Do we have any other further discussion on the proposed charter amendment issue? If we have no other issues on this, I'll open up to, is there any other new business of city council members outside of the charter discussion? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
It's one of the bills that was recently adopted by the Florida legislature is the one that opens up rights-of-way within counties and municipalities for use by wireless service providers. I've been working with your city staff to prepare an ordinance to bring before you that will provide regulations to attempt to implement the law, which is written in certain ways where it's internally inconsistent and very difficult to interpret the intent. So you have municipalities across the state that are in the process of trying to adopt regulations to implement this. And so what we're doing is we're putting something together for your review and consideration upon first reading on June 27th. Have it public hearing and second reading in July with a retroactive date to the July 1, which is the effective date of the statute, so as to have regulations in place when you have permit applications coming in from companies that seek to put small wireless facilities in the right-of-way and otherwise put antenna and other items on utility poles that are located within your right-of-way. So we're requesting a special city council meeting so that you can see the draft ordinance. We can have a first reading of a draft ordinance and then have it for public hearing and adoption in July.
Okay, we have a issue that has to be taken care of because of a, once again, imposition by the state legislature on local government and home rule regarding mini cell tower ordinance for consideration for a special meeting on June 26th. I'm sorry, June 27th. If it's acceptable, I would ask for a motion to schedule a special meeting on June 27th, and I suspect we would need a time.
Yeah,
We already have a meeting scheduled, don't we?
We have the second CRA meeting that is in line, so we thought this would be a good time to do that.
What time is the CRA meeting?
The CRA meeting, again, is advertised for 4:30 again.
So this would be a motion for a June 27th meeting at 4 o'clock?
If we could, no, it should be subsequent to the CRA meeting. One of the things that we're going to have to do is, obviously, CRA, again, my impression is that the CRA will take some action. That action needs to come before a city council meeting, so it would be appropriate to do that as well at the same time. The ordinance on the mini cell tower shouldn't take very long. We won't add anything else to the special meeting. It will be basically just council discussion from a CRA recommendation, as well as the special meeting to address the mini cell tower ordinance. I don't know if this would be appropriate, but we can schedule it for 6 p.m. or as soon after the CRA meeting. CRA meeting may take a half hour, it may take an hour, we don't know, but if that would be appropriate.
Well, that's it. So if the CRA meeting is already scheduled for 4:30, you could schedule the special meeting of the city council for 5:30 or as soon thereafter as scheduling permits the meeting to begin, so that you're not waiting around.
Okay, so if it's acceptable to council, I would ask for a motion to schedule a special meeting on June 27, 2017 for the mini cell tower ordinance discussion to be at 5:30 or immediately following the CRA meeting.
So moved.
There's a motion by Councilmember Pegorlich.
And just to clarify, it would be not only for the consideration of the first reading of the cell tower ordinance, but also to consider and approve action taken by the CRA on that same
We
meeting.
would have to do that anyway, so do we need a motion that says that?
Well,
Because-
your rules of procedure indicate that if you're going to call a special meeting, that whatever motion that's made calling for the special meeting will set forth the purpose for which a special meeting
Okay.
is being called. So I'm just trying to clarify.
So it'd be the ordinance, the mini cell tower, and the discussion of our CRA meeting by city council. There's been a motion, and
Sorry to interrupt, but are we also not considering the a medical marijuana moratorium for June?
No,
Oh,
we're not.
Okay, sorry.
I will second the motion for appointed, so we can discuss it. Councilmember Donahue.
Yes, I have permission to attend the meeting via telephone at the CRA meeting. Ask permission to also attend this second special meeting.
I understood that the motion made at the last city council meeting was a blanket motion to permit attendance at meetings of both the CRA and city council. So that was my understanding of the intent of the motion.
Wonderful, okay, thank you.
Unless somebody else on the dais misunderstood what the motion was, that's how I understood the motion.
So going forward, it's from now
What
on?
it would be, you made a motion that was approved for a certain time period, and we can actually adopt, we can modify the rules of procedure to incorporate that into the rules of procedure as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was covered.
I thought it was for June, July, and August.
Okay.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion is carried to have a special meeting at, immediately following the CRA meeting on June 27th.
And if I could just address the issue that Mr. Kokoski was raising. The legislature just very recently adopted Senate Bill 8A that provides for regulations of marijuana, certain marijuana facilities. And it also provides municipalities with the ability to ban them outright, marijuana dispensing treatment facilities. I know that there are certain jurisdictions in the state, including Plant City, that had adopted ordinances to ban such facilities based upon the fact that federal law finds marijuana to be illegal. I'm not suggesting what the city council should or should not do. What we've discussed teeing up is an ordinance that provides for an extension of the moratorium for 90 days, which requires 2 public hearings, which is why it's not going to be heard on the 27th, because there wasn't time to advertise it. But I'm just throwing this out that if municipalities do have the ability under the newly adopted law to ban the dispensing facilities within their jurisdictions, if municipalities adopt regulations to regulate them, the regulations cannot be more restrictive with regard to the location of those dispensing facilities than regulations relating to pharmacies. So I'm just throwing that out as food for thought so that you understand this, what's coming down the pike.
I would also add to that it's my understanding that Hillsborough County just recently approved allowing 16 dispensaries within Hillsborough County. So just food for thought for everybody.
There any discussion about the issues regarding the medical marijuana moratorium and the date set for it? Is there anything further for the city manager's report, Mr. Stevenson?
No, sir, Mr. Boss, thank you.
I think, I believe,
You know what? I do have one.
I believe Chief Albano has
I need,
clarification for you.
yes. There
It's been
is.
a long night.
I know, I apologize. Come on up here, because you're going to explain it anyway. There's a possibility to get some grant funding for personnel out of.
How could you forget that?
Out of DOJ. And in order to do this application, we really need council's buy-off on this before we move forward. I'll ask Chief to kind of explain the program so that we can get this thing moving.
Good evening, council members and Vice Mayor Boss. As the city manager said, we have the opportunity to apply for a Bureau of Justice Assistance Community-Oriented Policing Services block grant. The monies that would be received would help us to regain the 2 positions that have essentially been lost, one that we have lost and the other that's been frozen for, I think, about 5 or 6 years. Come before you tonight simply to ask for your permission to apply. Applying does not bind us to an acceptance if we are awarded the monies. We would then come back to you if we are awarded the monies. Also, in addition to the typical application process, because of our situation and speaking with our finance director, we're also going to be asking for an exemption to our match to that. And ideally, we would be awarded under those conditions. So I'd be able to come back and share with you that we do have an award, and because of the waiver that we're going to apply for, that we won't have any match associated with those monies. The one thing that all of these types of grants do have is a 1 year after the grant. So in year 4, we would have to retain those 2 positions for at least 1 year. But again, applying for it, I'm simply seeking permission, and after that, I'll come back before you if we do receive the award for your approval.
So if awarded the grant, would pay for how many positions?
It would pay 200, we'd only be applying for the two. We qualify for three, but in the situation that we're in, I'm not asking to expand. I'm asking to simply get back to the 2005 staffing levels that the previous councils established as our
If
staffing.
awarded, would award monies to pay for two positions for 4 years, essentially?
If we get the waiver, it would pay completely for two positions for 3 years. In the fourth year, we would be required to pick up the cost of those two positions for at least 1 year before we could lay officers off.
Okay.
But again, applying for it's just your permission to do that. Before any award is accepted, I'll have to come back and explain everything then.
We don't want to waste a lot of time if you
Right.
guys aren't in agreement.
Is there any
with this. I mean,
other discussion on it? But I'm gathering from what I hear, we would have to make a motion to go ahead and say that the chief has authority to go ahead with the application process. And I believe I heard a motion to approve that from
Second.
Councilmember Donahue, second by Councilmember Gorlich. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And Mr. Stevenson, I believe you have another issue of.
I've
bring up
got
to us.
just two quick things that I need to bring up. Thank you, Chief, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chief.
The golf course has a meeting with the members this Thursday at 7 PM. We will be attending that meeting to kind of listen and see what's going on. I'm sure Mr. Boss will be there as well. Mr. Pagorlich just showed, this Thursday, 7 PM.
Okay.
You had showed some interest in being
I am
engaged with
a
all this.
liaison. It's not a matter of interest, I'm the
So-
appointed liaison.
I will look for you there then.
Okay.
The other thing is
At the country club?
Yes, sir. Just real quick, I appreciate everybody's patience with all these text amendments. That is a tremendous amount of work that Mr. Kokowski and Community Development did. Thanks to Mr. Conley, they put countless hours. These are projects that we've been trying to get to council for the last couple years, that they've finally gotten to, and the Planning Commission did a lot of work. There is a lot of work that went into all that, and we appreciate their efforts. So with that, we thank everybody. So, that's
Is
it.
there any other business come before council? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.